in court. But before he does, we'll open the line.
The readiness of non-strategic nuclear weapons, sometimes called battlefield nukes due to their low yield, to ensure the security of the Russian state. Video released by the ministry shows crews preparing launch systems and readying a bomber to carry a nuclear warhead. President Putin ordered the drills amid comments from Western officials implying a potentially deeper role for their countries in defense of Ukraine. The U.S. and its European allies have accused the Russian leader of engaging in nuclear blackmail. Charles Mains, NPR News, Moscow.
Large crowds are lining the streets of Tehran today for the funeral procession of Iran's president and the 7 others who were killed in a helicopter crash on Sunday. Videos on social media show people clutching photos of the president in and around the University of Tehran, where the country's supreme leader led prayers. Mistakes have derailed a long-running effort to investigate and prosecute corruption within the U.S. Navy. Andrew Dyer of member station KPBS reports a federal judge in San Diego has overturned the bribery convictions of 5 former military officers in what came to be known as the Fat Leonard case.
It's the latest fallout from what Judge Janice Sammartino says was significant misconduct on the part of federal prosecutors in the more than 10-year-old case. 4 of the men have had charges reduced to misdemeanors and were given $100 fines. The 5th, former Navy Commander Steve Shedd, had his charges dropped completely. Shedd admitted to accepting more than $100,000 in bribes when he first pleaded guilty 2 years ago. The felony convictions of 4 other Navy officers were overturned last year. For NPR News, I'm Andrew Dyer in San Diego.
This is NPR News in Washington.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. 81 degrees in Boston right now. The state EPA advising vulnerable groups and anyone with respiratory problems to limit strenuous activity outdoors today because of an anticipated increase in smog. An air quality alert has been issued between now and through late tonight for Boston and much of eastern and central Mass due to ground level ozone. Bill Leatham is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service and says it happens on these hot, sunny days.
The sunshine interacts with emissions from cars, from buildings, and when those two things interact, it can create that ground level ozone.
The EPA says smoggy days are predicted to increase with climate change, which will place a burden on already vulnerable communities. For the first time in 20 years, no women are on the Town of Brookline Select Board. Brookline News reports that after the May 7th elections, no women were elected to the 5-member board. It's the first time that has happened since 2004. The disparity comes despite the fact that many women currently serve in other elected positions, like on the school committee and on town meeting. Boston Public Radio political commentator Jesse Mermel says it's just hugely disappointing to not have any women on the highest governing body in Brookline. Mermel served on the select board from 2007 to 2013. Red Sox wrap up their series with the Rays tonight, and it is a hot one today, sunny and 90, the first hazy, hot, and Henry day of the year. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits, at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Eastern Brownie, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com. Thank you, /GBH News. Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island is going to zoom in later, Sheldon Whitehouse, who's going to talk about the United States Supreme Court and its trust issues with the American public. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. I should say up front, this is going to be a really tough show for us today. This morning, we learned that layoffs are happening at GBH today, including in the newsroom. We have been told nothing by managers this morning. I repeat, absolutely nothing. What we do know has come from the Globe and from individual employees who've just learned that they were terminated. We'll have more to say. It's really disturbing. We just want our coworkers to know we care about them, and we will do whatever we can to help them in any way that we can.
Yeah, ditto to everything you just said, Jim. I feel horrible, and my heart goes out to people who have lost their jobs.
And I want to repeat just one more time that the only reason we're not saying more and being more specific is because we know almost nothing. So, in any case, severe turbulence on a Singapore Airlines flight injured dozens, killed one man. The seatbelt sign was off. For those of you who would like to flout the rules and unbuckle the entire flight, maybe you'll want to think twice, because turbulence has increased significantly over the past decades, and new science is attributing it to climate change. There is 55% more severe turbulence now than there was in the 70s. Paul Williams, he's a professor of atmospheric science at Reading College, told NPR this morning that his research shows that changes in our climate are to blame. So climate's in the news, as we learned this week that the home insurance industry is at risk of collapsing due to the increase in extreme weather like floods and intense heat. We're going to talk to Juliette Kayyem about that in a few minutes. Insurers made headlines last year for pulling out of California, Florida, but states across the Midwest have also seen companies stop writing homeowners insurance altogether. So our topic for the first 30 minutes or so is climate change. The lines are open at 877-301-8970. It's an election year. One candidate is a proud climate change denier. The other has made the most significant investment in addressing climate change in American history. But we talk about the election almost every day, Marjorie. Almost no one ever brings up climate change as an issue determining what their vote is going to be. And so we want to know, is it a priority for you when you're picking a candidate? Or is it just way down the list of things that you're concerned about come the time for a new president or the same president come January of next year? 877-301-8970 is our number.
Well, I think we've all known about beach erosion. We've known about flooding. We've known about the inundation district. As David Abel, great film about the seaport in Boston, shows it's parts of it are underwater now. It's going to be in big trouble in a very short amount of time. I did not know till yesterday, when I was watching and reading about the plane that was flying over the Atlantic and that incredible turbulence that went down 100 feet, up 75 feet, down again. One gentleman was killed. I think 70 plus others were injured, some of them seriously. That this had to do, as you just said, with climate change, that there's been a 55% increase in more severe turbulence now than there was then. And there's a bunch of stories today explaining this whole situation. And warmer air from increasing greenhouse gas emissions is changing the wind speed in the jet stream. And pilots have a very difficult time navigating this. It's notoriously difficult for them. And there are warnings where it may be found, but it can't be picked up by the pilots on their radar systems or seen. So this is something else you have to think about when you get in an airplane, that because of climate change, are we going to have even more of this kind of horror, at 35,000 feet.
You and I are both scared of flying to begin with.
Can you imagine now? I am petrified of flying. And I think this might add even fuel to the fire. We never get an answer from the governor about Hampton Field and the expansion of Hampton Field for private planes. Maybe this will be the final thing about the climate change is impacting air travel as well. So you have to worry about the beaches that you went to. You have to worry about flooding in your own house. And the insurance that we're going to talk to more in depth with Juliette later. This isn't just in Florida or in California where the wildfires are. And it's not necessarily even from big storms like that terrible in Houston where they had the terrible toppling of all those wind towers and stuff. This is just what we see here. More frequent rain, more frequent flooding, more severe and frequent hailstorms. These kinds of things are taking roofs off people's houses when the winds get to a certain degree, and then they can't get, in 18 states across the country, they can't get, in many cases, any home insurance, and the business is basically going under.
You mentioned Governor Healy, and she's doing a lot on climate change. I don't understand the Hanscom thing either. We've talked to her about it. But can we discuss another governor, the dope that is the governor in Florida?
Correct.
So Ron DeSantis, in the last few days, obviously to make points after his embarrassment of a run for the presidency, has essentially banned climate change as a consideration in any decisions for Florida government, not to mention banning the use of the term in a lot of state documents. And I have to say...
Hasn't he banned wind farms too?
Offshore wind farms.
You can't have any wind farms.
And something about EVs, I can't remember the EV thing. He's doing something about EVs because they don't have a problem down there in Florida. Oh, actually they do. Here is Miami meteorologist Steve McLaughlin, my hero of the day. He's talking to viewers on Saturday about Florida's move, as we just discussed, to roll back climate change legislation and language. Again, meteorologist Steve McLaughlin. We have technical issues like America does, actually. So we'll get to Steve McLaughlin in a couple of minutes.
I mean, he's talking about the fact that there's, record heat, record flooding, record rain, record insurance rates.
Why don't you just read it?
Oh, we have it. Oh, we have it. Great.
In spite of the fact that the state of Florida over the last couple of years has seen record heat, record flooding, record rain, record insurance rates, and the corals are dying all around the state. The entire world is looking to Florida to lead in climate change, and our government is saying that climate change is no longer the priority it once was.
You know, Marjorie Egan for years has correctly been criticizing not all, but some, it used to be a majority, it's not anymore, of meteorologists who are climate change deniers, particularly the TV type. Is this guy fabulous, by the way?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of courage does this take in a state where Ron DeSantis rules dictator-like to confront the guy? I think it's beautiful.
And last night when they were talking about this tragedy in this aircraft, another Boeing plane, poor Boeing's having a tough spring here, and right up front said this has to do with climate change. This has to do with climate change. So you wonder at what point we're going to stop, increasing, we're going to keep making things worse, and we're going to make things better. And
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Nora O'Donnell, she from 60 Minutes, she had the Pope on.
Yep.
The other night, and he's been a big climate change person. We've said this a million times, but I'll say it one more time. Bill McKibben, who is the great environmental crusader, he has said the best thing he ever read about climate change was by Pope Francis, Laudato Si, it's called, and he said to Nora O'Donnell that unfortunately, vis-a-vis climate change, we have gotten to a point of no return. It's sad, that's what it is. Global warming is a serious problem. Climate change at this moment is a road to death.
Okay, so what's the voting demographic that purportedly cares most about climate change?
Young people.
Okay, and the poll we saw the other day, I don't have it in front of me, I think I have the number right. Joe Biden won young voters either 2-1, I think it was by 24 points, 18 to 29-year-olds in 2020. It's now a dead heat. So if climate change is the most important issue to young people, I know the economy matters too, they have decided, apparently, that Donald Trump will be just as good on the issue they care most about, as will the guy who made the single largest investment in the history of the United States of America in addressing whatever you want to call it, global warming, climate change. Let me tell you, in one sentence, we are doomed. Let's go to Deborah.
Hold on.
What?
I just want to point out, we had a gentleman who called yesterday. He sounded like a nice guy, and he was a Trump guy, and we asked him why he was voting for Trump. He said because he didn't like that Joe Biden had forgiven student loans. And I thought, okay, I get it. But really, that's enough of a reason with everything else?
If that's his most important issue?
Well, student loans, I don't think it's the most important issue to somebody that's like 40 years out of college and doesn't have any student loans.
No. He said,
he doesn't like the fact that he paid for
kids, he paid for his whole thing, and he thinks it's unfair.
Yep, well,
he's entitled to that.
I just think that's a little bit selfish, I think, because it's like saying my kids have already gone through the public schools, so I don't want to pay property taxes anymore because my kids have already got the education.
But in any case, we take some calls.
Just one thing before we get to that. You know what is the number one? I know it annoys you, Jim. I'm sorry, but I just want to point this out. One of the things that people say, especially Republicans, is at the top of their list: immigration.
Yeah.
Immigration is going to explode because of climate change. So if you are worried about immigration, then you should be worried about climate change because there's going to be migration because of climate starvation, not being able to irrigate certain areas, not being able to grow food on certain areas, and the areas being too hot. So where are people going to come? They're going to come to the United States of America. So get ready. If you don't like immigration, you ain't seen nothing yet. Deborah in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey, Deborah.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Hi.
Hi. So climate change is at the top of my list in terms of the election coming up. And the other thing I find really interesting is the insurance companies that are charging more for homeowners insurance and dropping out of states are also invested heavily, millions of dollars in fossil fuels. So I don't understand.
You surprised, Deborah?
No. Am I surprised? No. But really?
Yeah, I
Well,
don't know.
stay
I really don't have
tuned.
much else to say.
Juliet Kayam's got some expertise in the area, and she's joining us in about 20 minutes. So stick around, and you'll hear what she has to say about the impending insurance crisis because of climate change. Thanks for the call.
Here's Lucy in Worcester. Heck yes, it's a priority for me. Not only am I worried for my grandkids, but for myself. I have asthma, and I'm having such difficulty breathing today. I'm not yet 50. What's it going to be like when I'm 60? That's Lucy from Worcester.
So can you imagine an image? Mar-a-Lago's underwater. Donald Trump's doing a press conference as he's treading water, assuming he can tread water, saying climate change is a hoax.
You know, it's not very nice, but I'm sure I can't be the only American that when there's a hurricane coming up heading toward Florida, I do wonder if it's going to
Let
hit
it go to Mar-a-Lago.
Mar-a-Lago. If I had a choice between
Well, at least
his side of
there are two
Florida
of us,
or the other
Marjorie,
side
so-
of Florida, I must admit, I'm not proud of it, but I'm kind of hoping it goes to Trump's side of Florida. Mark in the car, thank you for calling.
Hello, Mark.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
So I just wanted to talk about, the messaging of all of this. And yesterday you were talking about Trump and how he's able to get away with so many of these things. But, we have a right-wing media branch
Yes.
that has been going on for over 35 years, and they've been prepping at least a third of Americans to fight all of this change. And that's been going on for years, if decades. And we're expecting things to change, but it seems to me that the Republican Party almost comes off from a position of strength in that we don't bow down. We don't accept change. We push back. And the crazy thing about that is that particular right-wing branch of media is owned by a gentleman in another continent. And on that continent, from the start of COVID until about last year, they lost 2 months of their life expectancy.
Who are we talking about? Rupert Murdoch?
Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. America lost 2.7 years of our life expectancy in that same amount of time.
Yeah,
How
Mark,
is
I
it-
don't want you to go away because Marjorie, you're singing Marjorie's tune about right-wing media essentially.
Well, it's- yeah.
Let me finish. Lying to the American people. But let me give you a fact to both of you. There's a poll out of Florida not saying that Floridians don't believe in climate change. The same Floridians who vote for Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, 90% of them in a recent poll think that climate change is a problem, which is well in excess of the national percentage who thinks climate change is a problem. And despite believing that, they elect a climate change denier in DeSantis and they vote for a climate change denier in Trump. How do you explain that, Mark or Marjorie? Mark?
Well, it's the messaging. It's not taken seriously by the right. It's kind of seen as a joke. Right now, people are up in arms against windmill farms. It kills whales. It streaks oil. But as if these people have never seen, offshore drilling. And there's no proof that whales are killed. But
Well,
no matter what,
that's
it's
a falsehood, by the way. We should get rid of that one right away. It's fishing lines and it's
Absolutely.
ship collisions. There's no evidence, but that's a big Fox News thing that the whales are getting killed by the wind farms. I've heard that from so many members of my family. I want to just go insane.
Members of your family.
Members of my family. That would be correct.
The
Mark,
NOAA is moving.
Go ahead.
The NOAA is moving into Newport, and people on the island are again up in arms about windmill farms. But the very, the number one oceanic, experts say that there's no problem, and they're coming to this particular town, and people ignore that.
Got it.
Because, again, I think it's messaging.
Mark, excellent call. Thank you
Well, the
so
same
much.
thing-
That's the National Oceanic Administration or whatever it's called.
The same thing
Yeah.
is happening on Cape Cod. They're putting this wind farm off of Martha's Vineyard, and people down where I am, my parents' house is in summertime where my sister lives now, getting everybody hysterical about these cables that are going to be 50 feet underground. Oh my God, and they're going to have a substation on Lake Wequaquet. Oh my God, suppose it explodes. People are getting all worked up into a frenzy over stuff that's not true, fake facts, as
By
we
the
would
way,
call
the man
these
who
things.
I consider the greatest United States senator in American history
He was on the wrong
was
side.
on the wrong side
He
of
was
that too,
absolutely
Ted
on the wrong
Kennedy,
side,
yeah.
yeah, because he was worried about his view, which I
I
always
think
thought
that
was
is what it was.
insane. He was also worried about sailing. And I thought, because the wind farm is off Craigville Beach, which is what they were talking about then, would have looked like
I know,
little
like a
tiny...
speck.
that was a big, bad thing that Ted Kennedy did. But you know what? It's interesting in this Florida thing. The big issue down in Florida is the fact that they can't get property insurance. Now, the reason they can't get property insurance is because there's so many floodings problems and hurricane problems. Miami is flooded all the time. So it's another one of those, like the people voting against their own self-interest.
Yeah.
I mean,
What's the
we've
matter
done
with
this
Kansas?
historically, and I think that there's, as the previous caller was saying, it's like, let's get the libs all upset. Let's get those liberals all worked up. The libs are the ones. Climate change has become a wedge issue, right? Like a cultural issue, even though it really has nothing to do with culture.
So in addition to the questions that I have posed about how high a priority, if at all, it is for you, and is it your top priority, the other question I think that really demands response is, do you think Marjorie's a bad person because she wants to see Mar-a-Lago underwater? I would say no. I would say
Well, you know,
she is speaking the truth, and many people, like me, are with her.
I don't want anybody to lose their job.
No, we don't want anybody to get
there.
hurt. That
And
should
we don't
be
want
clear.
anybody to get
No.
hurt.
We
you
want
know.
them to have other jobs, transferred to other facilities.
But I must admit, in my dark side,
Yeah.
when the hurricanes are coming, I think, wow, if it has to go somewhere, why not Mar-a-Lago? Okay, stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The world takes you outside U.S. borders and connects you with the most important events happening all across this big blue marble. We introduce you to memorable people whose stories will stick with you. I'm Carolyn Beeler, global news and inspiring voices that connect us with people around the globe. Join us weekdays on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And National Grid, helping businesses work toward a sustainable future by offering guidance on heat pump solutions. Learn more about how heat pumps can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions at ngrid.com/future. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan, with you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library. Stream at youtube.com/GBH News. Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island will join us in the 1 o'clock hour, correct? At 1 o'clock hour, he'll zoom in, and we want to talk to him about, there's no greater analyst of the, let me be kind, rogue nature of a part of the Supreme Court in this country. And obviously we all know what happened with the upside down flag outside the house of Samuel Alito the other day. We'll talk about that, reforms, and all that sort of thing vis-a-vis the Supreme Court. We're talking about now is climate change. Ron DeSantis down there has decided that climate change will not be a consideration when state policies are implemented, nor can the term be used in many cases. This great meteorologist stood up to them. Marjorie alerted me this morning to the fact that this airline, where one was dead and many injured, the precipitous drop that caused the injuries and the death were a function of climate change. It's becoming a serious issue. And we're asking why, at least, this is only a random sample for us, when there's as stark a difference on climate change as maybe any issue in this campaign, why, when we've taken probably hundreds, if not thousands, of calls about the election in the last 6 months, almost nobody says that's near the top of their list. 877-301-8970.
As a millennial, I no longer have much hope in the government mitigating the effects of climate change, just like I've lost hope in their ability to legislate common sense gun laws. MAGA has taken over the GOP and turned politics into a complete circus. It's culture wars from here on out. That's kind of a depressing, that's from Dan and Everett. And listen to this. I've been worried about climate change for years, but I'm in a moral conundrum. I inherited mineral rights for drilling oil in Oklahoma, which are currently paying my medical bills.
Okay,
Yeah,
go for it.
That's what somebody claims anyway.
And by the way, as I forgot, we want to know if you share Marjorie's notion, which is really unkind. She doesn't want anybody hurt, that she wouldn't mind seeing Mar-a-Lago underwater. By the way, an anonymous texter said Trump can draw on the hurricane map with a Sharpie to make the hurricane avoid Mar-a-Lago, as he did in that fabulous
and one more
moment when he
thing,
was president.
somebody just talked about they have a house on Audrey in Boston. She has a place in Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, and one company would only offer a policy requiring I pay a surveyor $1,000 to complete an elevation certificate to show that my house, which sits 25 feet above the lake, would not be flooded. She says FEMA doesn't think the house is a flood risk, but some insurance adjuster decided it was an issue, and that's going to happen. That's what we're going to talk about more with Juliet later on. Is I think it's 18 states already have this big problem. They focus on this little tiny town out in the middle of Idaho, where a heavy windstorm took roofs off the houses.
Can I give you a little advice?
What?
For sentimental reasons?
Yeah.
This weekend?
Yeah.
I'd take a picture of the Cape Palace. I would. I really would. I know it means a lot to you. Jonathan in Arlington, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Thank you for calling. Hi.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys, again. Second-time caller.
Thank you.
I'm 23, and climate is definitely the number one thing for my issue, and I'm very scared if Trump gets in for another 4 years because all the rollbacks he did when he was in office, we just don't have the 4 years to give up. So it's very nerve-wracking and scary for, I feel like, young people and just everyone in general, just like the outlook on the future. I mean, like you said with DeSantis, I don't know if you guys seen what's going on in the Keys with just basically fish dying left and right. And, he's trying to roll back climate change stuff. That's, insane to me.
Well, you mentioned something that made me think that I'm embarrassed that I didn't say when you're talking about the threat of Trump on climate change. The president picks Supreme Court nominees, and I think we recall it's not just Trump himself as president who doesn't believe in climate change and will roll back any environmental regulation he can. The Supreme Court, with the 3 votes that he put on it, have also severely limited the ability of the Environmental Protection Agency to deal with clean water and clean air. So that's another issue. Jonathan, we're really glad you called, but don't go away. Why is it you think, I thought you were not atypical for people in your age bracket. I don't know if you heard me say a few minutes ago, most recent polling we saw was either earlier this week or last week, showed 18 to 29-year-old voters that gave I think a 24-point margin to Joe Biden in 2020 are dead heat in 2024. How do you explain that?
I think it's interesting. For people my age, it's very concerning just with, the housing issue, the cost of living, employment, getting jobs after college. But I feel like, all that doesn't matter if we don't have an earth to live on,
That is a fine
That's an excellent point, Jonathan.
Jonathan, call a third time. That was great. Appreciate it.
You know what's so insane about DeSantis to me? Never mind climate change. Every year I have these friends that retire down to Florida, and they live on the Gulf Coast, and it's beautiful. Except that I forget if it's in February or March. At some point, they have all these dead fish all over the beach, and it's because they call it red tide, and the fish are killed by pesticides from agricultural farming. They won't do anything about that either. Florida is a big tourist place. What do you do when tourists come down to a place where they can't sit on the beach because the stench of the fish is so intense? And this goes on for weeks where they can't even open their windows. So if he wants to bow down to big oil, which he apparently is doing and which President Trump is doing, remember he had all the oil company people down there asking for $1 billion for his campaign.
And we'll give you something in return, was the message.
Something in return. Yeah, I think oil companies have already given, not that much, but since he started, $7 million to Trump versus $186,000 to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden has paused some of these permits. But wouldn't you think the people in Florida would not want to have dead fish all over the beaches?
I would not want dead fish. Is that your question? I would not want dead fish on my beaches. Once again, it's like voting against your self-interest. Which Americans do
have done historically. Mostly financial self-interest. They'll vote for Trump even though he's not going to do much for the middle class, and they will vote against Joe Biden because he wants to.
Remember that book? What was the name of the book by the great, I think, sociologist?
What's the matter with Kansas?
No. That was Thomas Frank. But that was the original one. But the one out of Louisiana talking about all these workers that are poisoned by
Arlie Hochschild.
Arlie Hochschild.
Right, she wrote a great book interviewing all these people that work in the oil industry down in Louisiana, the most polluted state in America. And they know it's polluted, and they're getting all these dread diseases, cancer, children, the whole 9 yards. It's horrible. But they vote for these people that'll keep giving them the jobs, even though it may be killing them and their children. Emily and Newton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
I am the executive director of the Charles River Watershed Association.
Oh, we know who you
And
are.
in
Hi,
that-
Emily.
Yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Climate change is a bummer, and I get the downer, doomer sort of attitude that we can all wallow in. But I do think it's important to remind people, how long did it take for people to really take cigarette smoking seriously as we were watching our loved ones die? How long the gap between when we found the polio vaccine and it actually became widespread? Humans are not great at assessing risk. And closer to home, for decades, people gave up on the Boston Harbor, people gave up on the Charles River, but we got it done. It's not where it needs to be, but it is monumentally different than many of us in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so I just want people to keep in mind that when human beings decide that we're going to solve something, we can be amazing. And Massachusetts is the innovation state. So I really don't want people, whether it's millennials or people of any age, to just be depressed and wallow in self-pity. We actually can solve this problem.
Well, Emily, let me tell you, I am depressed and I am wallowing in self-pity, and I'm glad for your optimism. The problem is, well, the horror of, for example, cigarette smoking, we lost a lot of people we loved. It didn't affect the next generation, except that you lost somebody you loved. The time was not running out.
Yeah, we're
on
running out of time.
Fixing the
is the
cigarette
problem.
issue. We are running out of time. Then you know this 10 times better than Marjorie and I do. There's a point of no return, and we're not that far away from it. Is that not fair?
That is relatively accurate, but
Thank you.
The timing of when we can keep things from being worse. We can get farther. We can not get as close to the tipping point. So the actions that we take now,
I agree.
And Massachusetts is a state that other states do emulate. They may resent us, but so I just want your listeners to keep in mind, like, reach out to your local officials, reach out to your state officials, say, what are you doing to mitigate climate change, to protect from the impact of climate change? We absolutely can be doing more, and support the governor when she's trying to do hard things. That is what we need. We need that political support, including investments.
Emily, we're really glad you called, and thanks for the work that the Charles River Watershed Association does. Call us again soon. Good to hear from you. What are you laughing about?
I agree with Marjorie. I am also a bad person, but I not only want Mar-a-Lago underwater, I want Trump underwater with his orange wig floating on top.
Now, that's not, by the way, just so everybody knows, that's a joke.
That
you
is
can
a
get in
joke.
trouble for
We
that
do
kind
not
of thing.
certainly
We
want
do not.
Trump underwater.
We do want Mar-a-Lago underwater. We do not want Donald Trump. We want
He
to
could be
clear
briefly underwater, then he could pop back up. I'm sure he can swim. He can pop back up.
I'm not sure
to
he
the
can.
surface.
Why do you think he can swim?
I just think
He doesn't look like the kind of guy who can swim.
Yeah, I don't know. I think most of
Can you
them.
imagine him getting out of the pool, what that must look like with that thing on his head? What do you think of that? I'm serious. Can you imagine that?
Listen to this. I wouldn't mind seeing all these obnoxious Massachusetts liberals get eaten by sharks off Cape Cod.
You know,
I
Mark,
like that.
did you say this on the air or off the air? I can't remember. If almost everything that we do on the show that's a threat, people are, like we're talking about Florida today, how much worse it is there. We have a governor that actually cares about this. She was just at the Vatican. We have a mayor that cares about it. She was just at the Vatican. Google David Abel's great film, as Marjorie mentioned, The Inundation District, and it's a play on words, the Innovation District, the seaport, and look at how the seaport's doing and what is likely to happen in the newest part of Boston. Again, it's called Inundation District, and it's a film made by David Abel, A-B-E-L.
Leo from Quincy says they were in Naples, Florida during red tide. Not only is there a stench, but everyone on the beach was coughing. It really affects your breathing. This is Art from West Bridgewater. You do realize that nothing you guys talk about to fight climate change will have an impact on it, right? Well, no, it will have an impact on it.
Well, no.
But I just want to answer Art. He says we need to spend $9-something on infrastructure, not this feel-good crap. I mean, I don't know
Well,
what
we're
you're
spending
talking
a ton
about.
of money on infrastructure.
Of course, it will have an impact. It will obviously have an impact. I mean, look at the woman that just called, talking about cleaning up the... I remember going for a ride when I was a young reporter in Boston Harbor, when it used to look like chemistry experiments. It would bubble. You'd go out in the boat and you'd see all this bubbling coming up and all these weird smells and weird colors.
Remember when Governor Weld dove into the Charles
River? That's right.
Was he drunk when he did that? No, I'm
No,
serious.
he wasn't drunk. He was sober. And I think Paul Salucci went right after him, didn't he?
I don't know about that.
They dove
Maybe
in.
he did.
Yeah, I wouldn't dive necessarily into the Charles River, but
No.
it's better than it was. Zoe,
Okay,
from,
no, we
we're
got,
out
well,
of time?
Zoe, really quickly,
Okay, sorry,
30 seconds.
Zoe, we're almost out of time.
Oh gosh, well, sorry.
No.
Be quick. It is one of my very top
Great.
issues to vote on.
Yep.
And it is actually why in the primary with Joe Kennedy versus Ed Markey that I chose Ed Markey, because he's such a strong advocate for climate change. And in this state, all things being equal with Democrats, that put him over the top for me. But I do feel like we are entering into, fiddling while Rome burns territory. And
literally.
I am hopeful that, literally, like the Pope said. And I, really hope that all things gel together and we can at least mitigate what has already happened and have a future where we're not all burning to death.
We're glad we got to you, Zoe.
Yeah,
Thanks for the call.
It's not going to be necessarily burning to death.
Because you could die
It could be flood or fire.
Yeah,
that's going to be our choice down the road.
Yeah,
oh, God.
That's the optimism of Marjorie Egan. Zoe, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, after just in a couple of seconds, we're going to talk to Juliette Kayyem. She is next, and she's going to detail the situation with the home insurance that people are not going to be able to get pretty soon, and more. She's also going to talk to us about Rudy Giuliani hawking coffee. That is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
College in the U.S. is expensive. And just when you thought you were done paying,
well, there's a technology fee,
extracurricular related fees,
textbook fees.
There's a $60 fee if you don't correctly check out.
I'm paying fees for things that I don't even use or necessarily need.
why schools nickel and dime their students. On our podcast, College Uncovered.
Colleges and states often want to push charges into fees so students pay for it instead of scholarships.
Listen today, wherever you get your podcast.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Rockland Trust Bank, dedicated to providing advice and support to the community for over 115 years. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And the Boston Foundation, believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF, move equity, move Boston. TBF.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. As we said, Rhode Island United States Senator Sheldon Whitehouse will just zoom in to our show in the 1 o'clock hour. The primary topic for him is the mess that is the Supreme Court of the United States, and nobody knows more about it than he does. We're joined now at the Boston Public Library by Juliette Kayyem. Marjorie has no interest in talking to Juliette about anything except her dress. We are going to talk about other things.
Thank you.
Juliette is a former
graduation
assistant. Oh my God, Juliette! I shouldn't have wrote it up.
I dressed up for you.
Is a former assistant secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book is "The Devil Never Sleeps: Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters."
Hello.
Welcome,
a little
Juliette.
early today.
Yeah,
Hey there.
that's okay. It's perfect timing.
Good.
So the New York Times just did this huge thing on climate, home insurance rather, and there's 18 states. They talk about it's everywhere from Delaware on the East Coast.
You could type in your state and find out what the increase is.
And the home insurance business is going to collapse sooner rather than later because they're paying out $1.25 or $1.50 for every dollar they bring in, and it's obviously unsustainable.
Yeah.
So pretty soon, I mean, right here in Boston, we may have trouble. They're already having trouble.
In Florida, but Florida's okay because you can't say climate change now, so it's cured. We're not going to worry about Florida anymore. But Massachusetts, we've been talking about this for almost a year now, as you started to see, and I was writing about some of the fissures in the system, which was that the backstops, which tend to be public systems, each state has its own sort of insurance of lapse defense. Those were getting overwhelmed. So while smaller insurance companies. So a couple things were happening. Smaller insurance companies were going bankrupt. Larger ones were leaving areas, creating what we call insurance deserts. And the state sort of, insurance of last resort was becoming first resort because people could not afford the premium. So something like 15 or 16% of Floridians only have an insurance of last resort. Well, if something really bad happens,
They're not gonna get covered.
they're gonna pay out through going into debt, through the state going into debt.
And the companies can cancel you without any. They can just cancel you.
They can cancel you. I mean, there used to be a period, but there used to be a period where a homeowner, like a car owner, could mitigate their premiums by doing X, Y, or Z. So you know, if you're a certain age, if you're 5 years without a speeding ticket, all sorts of things, the insurance companies would incentivize good behavior, and you would get a lower monthly payment. That used to be true in home ownership. You could do X, Y, or Z to protect yourself. You could have seawalls or whatever. Now they cannot make individualized assessments anymore. So instead of saying homeowner A, oh, you know, thank you for doing these things, we'll lower your premium, they're now saying, you know, homeowner A, you live in this neighborhood, we're out of there. We are out of there. And that is, and that's happening across the country. And it's not just hurricanes or sea water rise. It's, so you think about hail in Arkansas. So why are these premiums so high? It's these massive events, tornadoes from last night that we've been seeing, these massive tornadoes across Kentucky and Ohio and Iowa and the
Texas,
tornado
too.
alley, yeah, and
Yeah,
Texas.
7
You
dead
see
in Houston.
Well, you saw Houston, so that's not even a tornado. That was a totally freak weather event. It's not so freakish anymore. That came into Houston. I think it was up to 42% of all people in Houston didn't have electricity for some time. And so these things are happening at such a pace and such a magnitude. They're not even headlines anymore. And the insurance companies are saying, we can't do this anymore. We cannot make individualized assessments. We're going to get out, or we're going to increase your premium. We don't care, Marjorie, what you're doing to your house in the Cape to protect it. You're on the Cape, your premium is going to be, what is it? What do you think yours has gone up?
I don't know.
You should know.
I'd check if I were
I'm a little
you.
disorganized.
Yeah.
That's shocking. I don't think people know that. Can I ask a ridiculous question?
I'll just say in Cambridge, which has no flukish events, I think we've gone up 20% in the
We
last
have?
5 years. Yeah, mine has.
You don't know
I shouldn't
either.
be criticizing you. I don't know either, and I live there.
should just check.
You know, Juliet, you're talking about states having this backup sort of minimal benefit policies, if you know the policies of last resort. I know this is a ridiculous question. Is the federal government contemplating doing anything
So we have
in
it
the wake
for,
of this?
well, the problem is that when the federal government gets involved, it actually creates really bad incentives. And the bad incentive is because people will know they'll get paid out, in particular in the flood insurance program.
A federal flood insurance program?
We have a federal flood insurance program that essentially will come in the back door for communities that are flooded and pay out. It's not perfect, and it's not, you don't get an infinite amount of dollars, but it is at least some backstop for these communities. And a lot of people criticize it because, you know, it's just, who do you trust, right? So a lot of people criticize the public sector apparatus, the government apparatus, because they're basically saying, look, if the private sector is making a determination that the risk is too high to actually own a home, aren't we just having people live in riskier areas because they know that the federal government through the flood program, now it only impacts
That's
flood.
happened on the Massachusetts coast,
right,
actually.
exactly.
With some homes that have been destroyed that have been financed over and over again.
and over again.
So let me, wait. I didn't read the whole New York Times story, and so maybe it's in there, but I'm sure you know. Is it possible that the insurance industry is describing a situation that is not as bad for them as they're suggesting, in the hopes that they get a federal bailout, not unlike the airlines?
Well, I wouldn't even say a federal bailout. I think there's no question there's politics being played. The insurance companies are very sophisticated. I think for the smaller insurance companies, that's not true. I think that you could start your own insurance company for your community and feel confident that you could have a thriving business. You can't do that anymore because you cannot predict the risk anymore to that community, at least by weather events. Where the politics do come into play is a lot of states have lots of, and I'm not blaming them, I think it's good, lots of consumer-friendly, consumer protection laws that make it almost impossible for insurance companies to reflect the changes in the risk. You know, for example, you can't increase insurance premiums by X, Y, or Z. California was a good example of this, where it had consumer protection-friendly rules against insurance companies, and the insurance company said, "You've got to be kidding me! Look at California now." They came to a compromise, and I think that's probably what's going to happen state by state.
So what
and
do you
then you
say-
have and then you have the crazies. You have Florida. That to me, Florida, there's no strategy. I don't know what he's thinking because DeSantis, because he gains headlines by taking the words climate change out of every piece of legislation, whatever, or regulation. Their state public insurance scheme, which is the insurance of last resort for Florida, cannot sustain 2 more Ians. They are. I don't know what they are thinking, but if I were a private insurance company, Florida's not worth it. Because you have a governor who's not accepting who's not doing anything to mitigate or adapt, and you have a state under risk, and then you have this other thing that Fortune just reported on, this really horrible combination of elderly moving down there, assisted living, independent living institutions, but because they're corporations, they get hit on higher premiums on insurance. They're not considered homeowners; they're considered businesses. So you're now starting to see a lot of the nursing homes, independent living homes shut down.
Yeah.
So you have this confluence of elderly
That's
coming in. And look, DeSantis, I mean, you literally can't hold your breath long enough for that man to be term limited out. I don't know who comes around on the other end, but I mean, it is shameful what he is doing. It's not just like a joke. It is like, it's truly.
Does every state have a backup program? Do we have a backup
50
program?
we do. I forget the name of ours, but yeah.
But you know what?
We also have a rainy day fund though. So like anyway.
Okay.
They're talking
I
in
could
this,
talk about it forever.
in this piece that it's not, as you say, it's not just Florida, it's not just California. They go to a place called Marshalltown, Iowa.
Yeah.
And and the reporter shows up there and it looks around, notices the roofs look really new and he can't figure out what's going on. Well, they did have a tornado, that was 2018, but they had this wind event. They call it, just like you mentioned. I guess there's a name for it, derecho or derecho or something like that.
That's what Houston was.
It's just like a wind event, which is what we were talking about with the airplanes, with the airplane with the tourists, with the wind event. Just kind of this huge wind event, unexpectedly, and that's what the point they make in the story. It's not just the wildfires and the hurricanes and the tornadoes. It is these repeated small events, like the repeated flooding we're having here in Massachusetts, or the repeating wind they had in this town, which took off roofs of, I don't know, a third of the town or half the town. And they talk about how the insurance companies just say, sorry, we're canceling your policy, end of story.
And
exactly. You have no recourse.
Right. So there's some creative attempts out there as a sort of, in terms of maybe communities can begin to pool their insurance or sort of, so you don't have individual risk, but you would have pooled risk. Who knows? Someone's got to, all of these things are going to play out, but the only solution to it is you incentivize mitigation by state governments, local governments, and communities and individual homeowners, and some states are just out to lunch on that.
So it'll be like the Three Little Pigs will have to build concrete houses.
Yeah.
That'll be it. We'll just live in little concrete slabs.
So I shouldn't do this on the air because we're not supposed to do personal stuff, but just to save time. No, it's a small thing. Marjorie plans to call you at 2 o'clock to say, I lost my homeowner's policy.
I know.
How do I get a copy of it? Can you help her now?
I will help you.
At the noon break, you'll help her find her policy?
You must be on automatic payment and not looking at it.
No,
Do you not look at it?
You know what?
You own it with your sister.
You know what?
You own it with your sister. It's the sister excuse.
I am a very disorganized person. I am a horrible person.
You're the best person. What are you talking about?
A million years ago, I hired a wonderful bookkeeper. And she would tell me
I think
something's
you're telling
wrong.
us a little too much information.
No, you can totally.
She knows what's going on.
You can
I love
totally
her.
do that.
Her name is Judy.
Judy is now in the Turks and Caicos with your money. I mean, you don't over. Judy, I'm sure you're very trustworthy. I'm so sorry.
She is.
By the way,
don't take money from
one of our colleagues. I think said it clearly. Then we'll move on. Alito's wife did it. Marjorie's sister did it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that is the
That's right. That will be the
That's right.
yes.
My sister's fault.
Can we go to another
How about the
disaster in the
airplane?
making?
Yeah. About the airplane.
Well, go
What
ahead.
else? What did you want to
No, I
talk
want
about?
Marjorie to get it out of her system.
Let's
I
Marjorie,
do.
what do you want me to say?
No, we're both
Wear
scared
your
of flying to
seatbelt.
begin
Well,
with
now
anyway.
we learn that this airplane disaster where one person was killed, 70 plus injured,
Yeah.
when this plane was flying so violently
Yeah.
through turbulence that people were injured and scared to death, that this is now because of the heavy-duty severe turbulence has increased by 55%
Yes.
since 1970 because of climate change.
Yeah, so if it's not the airplanes or the airport, it will be the air. I don't know what
It's
to
not
tell
funny.
you.
It's really terrifying.
What? That was a good line.
It
I'm
was a
sorry.
good- okay,
it just
fine.
came
It's
to
a
me
good
like
line.
that.
Okay.
Well, I don't
I
know what. I
doubt
mean,
that.
what is? So you wear your seatbelt.
Yeah, wear
okay,
your seatbelt.
Can I just tell you
used to
something
have
you
to say
already
your
know?
prayers going down, take
Can I tell
off
you
and
something you
land,
already
and
know?
go down the runway. Now you got to be blessing yourself the whole way across the country.
800,000 to 1 million people are on domestic flights a day.
Okay.
and
In the
they're
United
fine.
States?
I think it's that high. I forget
All
what
right.
it is.
Oh my
so it's an
God.
industry that is working except for when it doesn't work. And so I mean I don't. That's just obvious. But
Okay.
that is true that the flying. It's not just that the turbulence has increased. What I found incredible is that the pilot had no idea how bad the turbulence is, which means that our monitoring systems.
Oh, that's
That's what
comforting.
they
That's
said
really comforting.
In this piece I read this morning, that this kind of turbulence is almost undetectable by
Yeah.
the pilots. They're going to have to change try to get better at seeing it coming.
It's all,
'cause-
but that's all that. To save lives now, it's not going to be you can stop the bad
Okay.
thing from happening. It's going to be, do we have a couple seconds to put our seatbelts on and
Yeah.
Too
whatever.
depressing. Let's go to another depressing
I know.
topic.
I was going to say. Did I
go
have a
to
non-depressing
the
topic?
bathroom when you're on an airplane.
We
I
do
guess you
actually.
Have to stay in
we
your
can
seat.
take it. Can we take it out of order? This is the only
What
upbeat.
was my good news?
The good news is this, and then we'll get back to some
Okay.
depressing news. I know I speak for myself. Nothing is more important to me in my life than coffee. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah.
Does it matter a lot to you?
It is. It's so bad.
Okay, it matters a lot to her. We have good news.
Okay.
Oh, I know.
Somebody who you all respect deeply has a new coffee company. It's called Rudy's Coffee. That would be correct. That would be the soon-to-be felonious former mayor of New York City,
Happy birthday.
Rudy Giuliani.
Yep,
Here
that's
is
right.
Rudy Giuliani's ad for his, and listen to the beginning of this is the best. His ad for his new coffee brand. Here it is.
You all know I stand by the truth. And if I put my name on something, I truly believe in it. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to something I'm incredibly
I know.
proud of.
Look it up.
My own brand of
How much is
organic
it?
specialty coffee,
Wow.
Rudy Coffee.
Rudy
It's
Coffee.
so good, I even recommend drinking it black.
Wow.
By supporting Rudy Coffee, you're not just treating yourself to exceptional coffee, you're also supporting our cause. The cause of truth, justice, and American democracy.
They cut it off. He went on to say,
What?
we'll be providing it free to all my fellow inmates. So I thought that was really a beautiful
It was.
sentiment.
It was.
So
He's
Trump's
creative.
selling
He's
steaks,
creative. He's
sneakers.
creative. Yeah.
Rudy is, I thought this was a joke when I heard this last night.
No,
He's
because
selling coffee
unlike
beans.
Trump, who's taking his legal fees from the RNC.
Yeah.
Yet another story that no one seems to care about. But if you give to the GOP, you're now paying for his. Giuliani has no institutional base.
So he needs to sell coffee.
I will say a story I heard in my world. So I do corporate work and whatever. I mean, that
Believe
man
me,
must
we
have
know.
plowed through money. No, because a story that I heard once was that he was charging one of the Gulf countries, I'm going to get myself into trouble, $1 million a month for like no work to be available to them. And once he started doing that work after 9/11, and I believe that. I mean, I believe that he was that desirable and then the Gulf countries would just want him on some Gulf country would just want him on the payroll. But I think if you look back at his net worth in his heyday, and he just plowed through it.
Well, you didn't hear what he said?
What
You
was
all
he
know I stand
doing?
by the truth. So
I
what's the
do.
big deal?
I do.
By the way, he did charge $1 million, but in addition to the services, he gave him a pound of coffee. So
Yeah.
that was
But
some.
you know, he will probably make a lot of money on this. I was surprised to
He's
learn
going to
during
jail.
well,
He is
before he
going
goes to
to
jail,
jail.
he'll make some money.
Yeah.
Michael Cohen, $4 million on T-shirts and the book. That's pretty good for Michael Cohen.
but Cohen has an audience that wanted to read his because it was sort of the anti-Trump audience. I don't know how well the Trump. I mean, I think the books about Trump do well, but I don't know if like Rudy Giuliani
Coffee.
Yeah,
You just don't see
I
it?
mean, he's I'm just stating what even the New York Times has had a story on, or which is, that he has a substance abuse problem.
Well, they said serious alcohol.
Yeah, serious alcohol.
By the way,
Yeah,
is
but-
anybody in the audience a dental hygienist? Because I love my dental hygienist and my dentist, but I'm about to, not me, but someone said, you quoted them yesterday, that video from his 80th birthday party when he was served by the officials
was too
from
much, and that
Arizona. What did they say? Rudy Giuliani surrounded by a bevy of dental hygienists.
Yeah,
that's right.
Was that,
yes,
was that what they said? It
yes.
didn't look that way, did it?
Yeah, but
That
I
was
mean,
nice,
that's not
though.
fair to dental hygienists.
No, I love dental hygienists.
I do too.
I do. They're really good.
They're so nice.
Fahim
My thing. The
Rasool, my
dental
dentist, best dentist
hygienist.
in
The
America.
dental hygienist is the good cop to the bad cop dentist. And I describe my
Not
dentist,
mine.
who I love as
love
well.
mine, yep.
He's the only man in my life who can yell at me about my bad conduct and I don't defend myself.
Wow.
Like he'll be like, "You're not flossing." I'll be like, "I
a
know,
beautiful
I'm not
story.
flossing."
Okay.
Gotta
And,
floss,
any
Juliet.
other man, I defend myself because I'm, they're wrong. But
Okay,
him, I'm
before
like,
you go, by the way, it's £2 for $29.99, which is not horrible. The coffee's horrible, but that 2 for 2. Very briefly before you go, one
Yes.
of my great fears, and I would argue my greatest political fears, are deep fakes. I mean, after I saw the first deep fake that was prominent with Nancy Pelosi, they slowed it down, and it was primitive to show to pretend she was drunk. And then in New Hampshire, we heard the phone call that sounded exactly like Joe Biden. It was done by a magician in New Orleans, and he said 5 minutes, which said don't vote. This is a business issue, but it just shows you what the potential is. Here's a little side by side. First, you're going to hear the voice of Scarlett Johansson as the AI assistant Samantha in the movie Her, one of the sexiest movies of all time, by the way. After that, a clip of the Scarlett Johansson-inspired ChatGPT assistant that OpenAI just released. Listen.
The DNA of who I am is based on the millions of personalities of all the programmers who wrote me. But what makes me, me, is my ability to grow through my experiences.
Me? The announcement is about me? Well, color me intrigued. Are you about to reveal something about AI? Or more specifically about me as a part of OpenAI?
So how are we not totally screwed? When I don't know who I discussed this with recently, who said, calm down. The night before the election, that same Joe Biden fake call goes out to 15 million Americans in the 6 key swing states. What do we do about this?
It's going to require
you have 10
regulation
seconds,
and legislation. I mean, I think
Well,
what
that'll be
Sam
happening
Altman.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and The Huntington, presenting Toni Stone, the remarkable true story of the first woman to shatter expectations and play pro baseball on a men's team. May 17th through June 16th at the Huntington Theater, huntingtontheater.org.
Ireland conjures up images of wild water, lush green, and rocky landscapes. On a new Nature, explore the stunning scenery of the Burren and watch Wild Ireland, Kingdom of Stone. Tonight at 8 on GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. 3 European countries say that in the coming days, they plan to formally recognize a Palestinian state. NPR's Asma Khalid reports the U.S. government remains opposed to the unilateral recognitions.
Norway, Ireland, and Spain all say they will officially recognize a Palestinian state. Their reasoning is that a two-state solution is essential for long-term peace in the region. The symbolic move was welcomed by Palestinians but condemned by Israeli leadership. A spokesperson with the White House National Security Council said that although President Biden is a strong supporter of a two-state
immigrant to be in Texas. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News, Eagle Pass, Texas.
Now to new economic data out today. Sales at Target stores were down in the most recent quarter. NPR's Scott Horsley reports a discount chain is hoping to bounce back with a new appeal to cost-cutting customers.
Target says its sales dropped more than 3% in the most recent quarter, and profits fell short of analyst expectations. Earlier this week, the retailer announced widespread price cuts on essentials like milk and diapers in a bid to get more shoppers in the door. Sales of existing homes fell slightly last month, but home prices continue to climb. The National Association of Realtors says the average home sold for just over $407,000 in April. A shortage of homes on the market is keeping prices elevated. 1 in 3 homes sold last month went to a first-time buyer. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 74 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro, and we begin with news from within the GBH Foundation. New members from real estate research firm The Warren Group show that home sales were up 7% last month.
The uptick marks the state's largest year-over-year sales increase since June of 2021. It could be a sign of more movement to come in a stagnant and enduringly expensive market. But the Warren Group's Cassidy Norton says it's too soon to say whether a trend is emerging.
This is the traditional spring housing market, and April is a good indicator of how it's going to go from here on out, we hope. We'll need to see May numbers, I think, to really call it a trend.
The jump follows a lengthy period of relatively flat home sales. All in all, 3,100 single-family homes were sold in Massachusetts last month at a median price of $610,000. Alexi Cohan, GBH News 89.7.
83 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. This is Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You want to mention that Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is zooming in later in the show to talk about the crisis at the United States Supreme Court. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now by Boston Globe restaurant and food critic, business columnist and host of the Say More podcast, Shirley Leung. And by the way, I should say up top, I'm assuming most of you have seen her fabulous piece she wrote with Deborah First, rating the best dim sum restaurants in Greater Boston. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. And the reason you're going to watch it on streaming, if I were you, Marjorie is going to eat a chicken foot.
Marjorie's not going to eat a chicken foot.
She tried to pawn the chicken foot off.
No, she's eating the chicken foot.
No.
I can't do it, but the rest of it looks really great.
Our colleague has brought some dim sum from one of the top-rated restaurants, but we'll get to that in a few minutes.
And it's all labeled.
I know, I love the labels.
I love the labeling. It's absolutely wonderful. But before we get to dim sum, you did write a great piece about liquor licenses, and it just enraged me, the unfairness of these liquor licenses. So tell us what you did. You and your colleagues have written a lot about this, too. This was Didi Copley was the one, the liquor license system is broken.
Right. So Didi and I have been working on a liquor license series. This is the first part for the past couple of months. And this all started almost a year ago when I wrote a story about a liquor license in Boston, a full liquor license hitting the high mark of $600,000 for one liquor license, and how that was causing a real crisis in the restaurant industry. Basically, only those with deep pockets, seasoned operators, chains, could afford a liquor license. And so I wanted to look into more what's going on and what happened to the big batch of licenses in 2014. This was pushed by then City Councilor, now Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. This was hailed as the biggest fix to the liquor license system since Prohibition. And it turns out that the 70 licenses that were created, sure, there were, pockets of success. Dorchester got a lot of licenses, Roxbury, East Boston, but Mattapan, not a single license landed in Mattapan.
Well, you contrast these two restaurants, Bon Appetit, a Haitian restaurant on Blue Hill Ave in Dorchester, and this Divine Mercy, another store not that far away. It's in Mattapan, right?
Yep, half mile, both on Blue Hill Ave.
So tell us what's going on at one and what's going on at the other.
So if you go Friday night at Bon Appetit, the bar is full. It's got a beer and wine license. It actually scored a coveted license out of this 2014 law, because back then they create a set of restricted licenses, meaning they're free. You only have to pay the annual renewal fee, which is like a couple $1,000s. And so this restaurant was alive, and bustling on a Friday night. And then you go half mile down the street and on the Mattapan side, the restaurant, sometimes it's empty on a Friday night. The dinner crowd waxes and wanes. And so you can see how big of a difference a license can make in a neighborhood. And what was shocking to me, I walked around with Representative Russell Holmes, who grew up in Mattapan, still lives in Mattapan, and he said, I want you to walk through Mattapan, and there's a lot of places you can eat. There's pizza joints, there's places you can get a burger, but you can't. There are not that many places where you actually can sit down, have a meal, and have a drink. And he's like, that's what we want in Mattapan. Why can't Mattapan have that? And I was actually shocked by that a lot of neighborhoods, it just is kind of an everyday luxury, right?
And unless you're a chain, the reality is if you're an independent restaurant and you can't sell liquor, the likelihood of success is minimal at best. So it's a life or death kind of thing. The most aggravating part of the story to me are not just the wonderful/horrible examples that you and Marjorie were talking about. We've discussed this with you and independently of you before. One would think in a democracy that the mayor of the town, in this case, Michelle Wu, and the city council of the town, elected by the people in the city, should be able to say, well, we think we should have this many liquor licenses. But in fact, they don't have that power.
No.
The power rests in the state legislature. And I want to summarize what I think you were saying is why the legislature won't cede that power and basically remove the cap so that decisions can be made by the leaders of the community is all about power. It's just, that's the bottom line.
It is, and one thing that really, and now Ayanna Pressley her original home rule petition was to remove the cap. So Boston and many other communities in Massachusetts have to go to the legislature if they want more licenses than kind of what was originally set out for them. And Boston has hit the cap because it's a thriving city. There's the Seaport District, there's lots of new restaurants there. So it hit the cap basically in 2005. And so, and it's been really hard to get a license. If you want a license, you have to buy it from someone else. You can't just go to the city and get one. And so that really dawned on me doing this series that Ayanna Pressley was right. The real fix is to lift the cap completely. But the legislature will never give up any power.
Which is disgraceful.
So
it's really disgraceful.
And so
these businesses can't survive.
Right.
You know what I want to ask you?
Yes.
No, it's also undemocratic. I mean, the other part of this, again, this is an issue that only affects the community involved.
Yeah, Sturbridge
the elected leaders. By the way, if Michelle Wu and the city council don't want to issue any liquor license, that's fine. That's their business. If you don't like it, vote them out of office. If they distribute too many, vote them out of office if you don't like it, but let them decide.
But I have what may seem like a stupid question. Why do we even need a liquor license? If you're going to open a restaurant, you're going to sell food and you're going to sell liquor, and then the inspectors will make sure that you're doing things right, but cleanliness and all that kind of stuff. Why do we need a liquor license?
I mean, there should be some regulation, right? You don't want underage drinking, right? You want to make sure that everyone's, following the rules when you serve alcohol.
But that's something that you don't need a license for. You could just open your restaurant, and if you're not following the rules, you get in trouble. If you're following the rules, you're fine.
I mean, I think when you serve food, there's also a license.
Right.
I think, but I think what you're saying is that there shouldn't be a cap. It should go. The city should have an unlimited number of licenses. If they want to emit more licenses, great. It's up to them.
Yeah, well, I just think if you want to get a liquor license, you should be able to get a liquor license. Maybe you pay $1,000 or you pay $2,000, but I just don't get it.
Well,
I don't get the justification.
It's not let's assume there's a strip, and there are plenty of them, by the way, in this community, where every place is a restaurant. You might decide as the mayor or the city council, I don't want 12 liquor licenses on that street, and based upon that, someone may choose not to open a restaurant. But let them decide.
Okay, you live in a place surrounded by liquor licenses.
I do.
I live in a place surrounded by liquor licenses. Washington Square in Brookline, where I live, every other store is a restaurant with a liquor license. And you know what? It's great. Everybody's outside. They're drinking. I mean, why is this a big problem? I just don't understand it.
It's a big problem. Oh, and why is Michelle Wu not allowed to decide to have rent control in her community majority that's supported by
Well, that's the
two-thirds of
same
her
thing.
people? Why can't she have a real estate transfer tax, which is supported by her people? Because these people are on power trips on Beacon Hill, and that's the bottom line. Read her series. We don't have time to go through every single piece. The first installment is fabulous.
But I would
Shirley.
also say part of that problem is us, because if you think there's a problem with the legislature getting in the way of all these improvements, you have to know who your legislator and state senator is, and you have to harass them, and because they think that we don't know what they're doing. Oftentimes you can't find out what they are doing because these committee votes are not public, but you're just going to get on their backs because nothing will change unless they think that
in all fairness, when they're out for 5 months, you can be researching what they're doing. So that's the bottom line. We're talking to Shirley Leung from the Boston
All right, can we
Globe.
eat something now?
No, we're not. No,
No, that's the end.
We're going to
It's
get
gonna
to
get
this.
cold.
No, you're going to wait a minute. You
It
wanted to
already
talk
is
about the
getting cold.
podcast. All you talked about this morning was the damn podcast.
Okay, this is another thing. The Karen Reed trial, which is going on right now in the Dedham Courthouse. You had a great podcast about this, and I thought it was very interesting. Where was the woman from?
Rebecca Lavoie.
We have a sound from her.
Rebecca Lavoie. She's from. She's the host of a true crime podcast called Crime Writers On, and she works for New Hampshire Public Radio.
Okay, I loved what she said
Here it
because
is.
there's this. Okay, go ahead.
Let's play it. Here's Rebecca Lavoie from the popular Crime Writers On podcast with Shirley on Say More.
This is a very Boston story. It might be the most Boston true crime case I've ever heard about. It's got a bar, it's got cops, it's got like close-knit, small town vibes, it's got a dog, it's got the snow. It's like straight like Dennis Lehane stuff in like so many ways.
It is a great story and has transfixed millions of people, obviously. But what I thought was interesting that she also mentioned is there's this gender bias about true crime. Talk about that.
Yeah, she thought that, we talked a lot about women, and she was a little, she got a little defensive.
She did.
Yeah, she got very defensive. She said, listen, I know it's not you, but, women, this is, it's not about us. I mean, you probably can explain it better than me.
Well, she was just saying that there's this idea that, women are somehow transfixed all the time by true crime. And she was saying that why don't you say, why are men obsessed with Goodfellas and mafia stories? Why is there that gender bias thing? But the point is, this is a great story. It's transfixed. They got reporters over there from Great Britain, all around the world. It's on television. There's people outside the courthouse every day. There's signs over 93 South, free Karen Reed, and all this. So why is this such a Boston story that's transfixed so many people?
Well, I think, so we also had Sean Cotter on, who is the Globe reporter who's been at the Dedham Courthouse.
He's done a great job. Great job.
So we had both Sean and Rebecca. We're in the fourth week of the trial. Probably go on for one more month. So we wanted them to kind of give us an assessment. What surprised them? What are they looking for? And I think both of them said it's transfixed us because we just never see a story like this. You have the center of the woman, Karen Reed. She's this beautiful, Fidelity, worked at Fidelity.
Designer clothes.
Worked at Fidelity, and she looks so put together. And then you have Boston police officer John O'Keefe, who's got his own backstory, raising his nephew and niece.
Of the parents who died.
And
now they're without John O'Keefe, who is also
and
dead.
She's accused of allegedly running him over with her SUV, leaving him for dead on a snow-covered lawn in Canton. And both of them, they're incredible characters in this trial, and people are transfixed. And I think with Karen Reed, a lot of people see themselves as Karen, just this ordinary person stuck, thrust into extraordinary circumstances. I
think a lot of people see themselves as John O'Keefe too. By the way, in fairness, I'm not
right.
Well, there's also the other angle of all the police corruption. I mean, we talk about this endlessly about the state police with their overtime scandals and this and all this kind of stuff, and then we've had our own scandals with the Boston police and the lack of transparency. So you have two police. You have the deceased John O'Keefe, the Boston police officer. Then you have another police officer who's in the house with the scene of the crime, and then you have a state police thing involved, and then you have the feds overseeing the police investigation.
Well, you left out a lot of critics of the prosecution are saying the Canton police is the problem here.
Canton police. And I learned in the podcast, which I did not know, that there was no search
warrant. That's what Rebecca said.
Of the house
where
the crime Well, we don't know if the crime occurred there. It may have not. It may have been that Karen Reed did run him over and leave him for dead. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it is odd that they wouldn't.
I didn't know that either until Rebecca pointed that out.
So there's a police conspiracy, is what the defense is alleging here. That
And we talked about how another reason why people are drawn is because there is a lot of. A lot of people are distrustful of the police and law enforcement.
Okay,
so
we're done with this.
We are?
We're going to, yes, we are.
Oh, my
because
goodness,
Marjorie, you're the one that said all morning you want to eat. So
Well,
here's
I
the
do.
we have one. No, don't. We have one more story.
I'm starving.
we have one more
Lead
story?
story in the Boston Globe this morning is the son of Robert Kraft, and I only say it that way because most people don't know Josh Kraft, who ran the Boys and Girls Club for a long while, and now is the head of the Don't Eat It, Marjorie, is head of the
not eating it. Just
Kraft
cutting it
Foundation.
in preparation.
Did not say no, let's put it this way, when approached by a Globe reporter as to whether or not he's considering running against Mayor Wu in a year and a half. What's your take on the story?
So many of us have been tracking Josh Kraft very closely, including myself, and all his whereabouts. And it seems like everyone I'm talking to, actually on this liquor license story, they're like, oh yeah, I just had lunch with Josh Kraft.
Really?
And so he is making the rounds in town. He seems to be at every event. And so, and I actually did email him a month ago. I said,
what did he say to you?
Do you want to have coffee? Do you want to meet up, have lunch? He's like, oh no, I'm too busy to talk to you. And so he's been avoiding the press.
The Globe reporter caught up to him. The Globe reporter did not have an interview.
Smartly, and he didn't give he didn't say no. He didn't
said
say
I'm looking
yes.
at a lot of things.
Right, exactly. So everybody is watching Josh Kraft very closely. We call him the Good Kraft. The Kraft has, I think, 3 sons, and so he's the one that's been running the Boys and Girls Club.
Great reputation.
Yeah, running.
By the way,
Boys
we
and
have a
Girls
friend
in
who
Boston.
whose judgment we trust a lot, who's deeply involved in the Boys and Girls Club when Josh was running it, who says that he was a spectacular leader
And
of
the
one of the
boys
most important organizations.
And girls clubs do so much for the cities. I mean, in terms of after-school programs and weekend programs and programs during vacations, etc.
So a lot of us see him. He really takes after his mother,
Yes,
Kraft,
Myra.
who was
Boy,
very,
you were really
very
digging yourself in there.
very
I'll tell you,
philanthropic.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kraft will not be taking Shirley Leung's calls anytime soon at Gillette Stadium.
Anyway, so now Josh is running the
Foundation,
the Kraft
Foundation. Yeah.
So that's what he's been doing, and he's a lot of people are reporting, he had bought a condo in the North End, which is in walking distance.
Because he doesn't live in Boston.
Yes, I think he has a home in Chestnut Hill, but he also bought a condo in Boston, I think last year. So everybody has been wondering if Josh Kraft.
Can we invite Josh Kraft like today to join us to talk about his work? Not his candidacy, his work. Okay, so here's the moment. Here's the deal.
Eat now.
Well, I'm going to ask you how you rated these things. What was the concept behind this whole thing that appeared in the Globe today? But before you do, tell Marjorie, because she can't wait, what is she eating?
Are you eating? Oh, you're eating
a shrimp rice roll.
Okay, this is like a rice noodle that's been steamed, and there's whole shrimp inside, and there's like a lightly sweetened soy sauce. Do you like it?
She loves it.
Have
She
you
doesn't
never
speak
had
with her
this?
mouth full.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so first of all, explain what dim sum is, and then explain what the endeavor was that you and your colleague engaged in, please.
So dim sum is a very popular style of eating in Hong Kong and southern China. I spent many a summer childhood summer in Hong Kong visiting my grandparents.
You did?
Yeah, and so every day we would go out to have dim sum. It's like a national pastime in Hong Kong. You have your hot tea, you have people push carts around, and there's little kind of steaming baskets of food, like shrimp dumplings or certain steamed buns, chicken feet, braised chicken feet.
Marjorie's going to eat chicken feet. Oh, yes, you are.
And so I think in Mandarin, dianxin means, point to your heart's desire or a little bit of your heart. And then in Cantonese, it's yum cha, which is drinking tea. And so it's
sort of like tapas before there was tapas. Is that a fair way to describe it? Okay.
That's it. And I think that's why we're experiencing a dim sum boom time in Boston.
I've said to you, and Marjorie knows this too, my kids, both of whom are Chinese American, were young. There is nothing that they enjoyed more than a Sunday going to a dim sum restaurant in Chinatown. Yeah. So tell us what you guys decided to do.
And they do it
what
there.
You did.
They push around the cars.
Well, not all of them.
Not all of them.
But I've been to
that used to be the way, but post-pandemic, fewer and fewer.
Okay,
really?
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
What did you do?
So what happened was that a couple months ago I went to eat dim sum in Malden, and I took one bite of my hagao, my shumai, my dumplings, and I said, I think this might be the best dim sum I've ever had in Greater Boston.
That was the genesis?
That was the genesis, and then I called up Deborah First, our restaurant critic, and I said, Deborah, I got an idea. Let's go eat at every dim sum place we can go to, every dim sum place worth eating at, and let's see if this is the best place or not, you know? So for the past 2 months, we've been eating at dim sum places. So imagine my beat has been booze and dim sum the past 2 months.
By the way, you brought people along, and you never, in all seriousness, the fact you did not call me is, I am so offended. It's unbelievable.
So what we did, we went to 10 restaurants.
She's avoiding that
Malden,
one.
Quincy, Boston's Chinatown. We try to order the same 4 or 5 dishes. So here you have those dishes that we ordered: the shrimp rice rolls, the hagao. Oh no, shumai. Oh, what happened?
Shumai is a different kind of dumpling. It looks different than a traditional dumpling.
We have the salted egg yolk lava, which I never had. It's sweet.
And a chicken foot.
And then a chicken claw.
Martha's going to eat chicken foot.
I'm not going to eat the chicken foot.
And anyway, so we ordered the same dishes, and maybe we threw in one wild card, you know. And so we've been eating our way. We've been inviting colleagues and friends, and sometimes our kids would come.
Not all friends.
Not all friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And anyway, so we determined that the best dim sum can be found in Malden.
Why? What's the name of the place?
There's a Ming's Seafood in Malden, and there's also a Ming's Seafood in Quincy.
Right? Yeah.
Now, both Ming's are excellent. I think the Ming's Seafood in Malden is slightly better, but there's also another restaurant, dim sum restaurant in Malden, Sungong. And I had low expectations for Sungong, but that was excellent.
Why was this number one? Not this, but why was the place in Malden number? No. Why was the place in Malden number one?
Where's Malden?
It's north.
Oh my God! This show.
Oh my God! It's north.
It's one of those M places.
It's a city.
I'm confused.
It's a city of about 65,000 people.
Okay.
It's actually
off 93. Off 93.
Yes.
Off 93.
Okay, I know
off the end of the orange line.
I'm all set.
It's 27% Asian. So another reason why there's good dim sum.
Jamie said it's right on top of Everett. That's why you know.
I know where Everett is.
Okay, so did you say yet? Why is it number one?
Well, it was just all around. All around really good. It did the classics really well, like hagao, shumai. It also
the dumpling is unbelievable.
Yeah, and this is not. This is
what do you call this?
That's shrimp dumpling.
Yeah, but
hagao.
Where's all this from?
So it is. Let me get this.
Yeah.
So that was the number one. Overall, number one was in Malden, Songong and Ming's Seafood. They did all the classics right. Good service, and also what we loved is that they also kind of threw in extra, like I don't know, more modern, elevated, what they call dim sum. So we like that. They had this one dessert which is they're in the shape of swans. They're like these pastries in the shape of swans, and they have durian inside, and durian's a kind of a fruit that you probably won't like.
Where's it from?
But then we wanted to crown like who's number one in Chinatown, right? And this is from Jumbo Seafood.
Oh,
and so Jumbo Seafood.
It's really good.
Yeah, so a lot of people go to Hela Moon or Great Taste.
Or China Pearl when it's open, which is not yet reopened.
Yeah. But we discovered Jumbo Seafood. Jumbo Seafood has only been open in Chinatown for the past 2 years. They were in Newton for a long time. They actually started in Chinatown, moved to Newton for like 15 years, came back to Chinatown 2 years ago, and we just found their dim sum, probably,
and that's what we're eating here.
Yeah, it's very, very good, and the best in Chinatown, and so, but it was great.
Okay, so first of all, how many people in the audience would like to see Marjorie eat a chicken foot?
Marjorie's not going to eat
Everybody.
a chicken foot.
Okay.
No, I'm
Now
not.
we'll start.
Don't take all the soy sauce there.
Excuse me.
Whatever
We're talking
that is.
about the audience and you.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay,
gonna eat
can
that.
you eat it? Can you show Marjorie how to eat a chicken foot, please?
I'm not going to do it.
This is Shirley that I'm talking to.
Okay, you got to put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
gbh.org/ what's the streaming thing?
And then you got to be careful. You got to spit out all the bones.
You got to spit out all the bones.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll watch Jim spit
that's
out all the
I'm gonna
bones.
do it. I'm gonna do it. It's fine.
Okay.
All right, that one didn't
What's
have
wrong
a maybe.
with, really? Wait a second. Let's
if you
talk
eat the
about
side
this.
here,
Eat
maybe
the side there.
Eat the side, no bones.
No,
you don't have to
no
spit out
bones.
any bones.
I can't do
it's
it.
actually
Marjorie,
really
watch
good,
us.
flavorful.
Watch us, please.
Nice job, Jim.
I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
By the way, where's Malden?
Malden's next to Melrose.
Oh. Where's Melrose?
Next to Medford.
Okay.
They're all together. Medford, Melrose.
All the
No,
ends,
actually,
yeah.
I stopped putting it together. Right, Malden is right
Yeah.
on top of Everett, which is also next to Medford. Medford is next to Somerville, which is next to Cambridge, which
Fabulous.
is near Brookline.
I just
So
say
there
a
you go.
chicken foot.
I'm all set.
I
Well,
just say
good.
chicken foot.
Good for you.
Wait a
great.
second, can we, let's delve into the psyche of somebody. Why would you not eat a chicken foot?
Just the looks of it is too much for me.
Well, Shirley Young is eating it. What do you think of her?
You know, my grandfather used to put
Exactly.
pig's feet in a glass jar.
Oh,
in my
pig's feet are
house.
really good.
Wait, and I remember seeing the little hooves when I was a kid.
We're doing
and
pig's feet
I couldn't
next.
take it, and they put them in glass containers.
You know, we
Oh.
wanted to bring the pig's ear. You guys didn't order the pig's ear, the pig ear salad and
Blame
malasol?
Jamie. I had nothing
That
to
was
do
that
with
was also an option too. You
Yeah.
probably could eat that.
Why
but-
didn't you get a
okay,
pig's ear?
Marjorie,
Nicole,
just
blame it on
Marjorie,
Nicole.
You know what?
Marjorie, just eat the side,
I
no
don't- I
bones.
just
This is
can't.
like Justice
it's
Alito
really
here.
good.
I can't do it.
It's really good
I know,
flavor.
I know it's really good flavor, but I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I just
Can I
can't
tell
do
you,
it.
but you two did a great job.
Oh, it's
Okay.
so
I mean, I
much
don't know
fun.
about the ratings because I don't know enough. I know,
So
but the
much
one thing
fun.
that made me sad, and then we got to go.
Yeah.
The thing that really made me sad. One of the great thrills when I first started going to dim sum. I don't know if I ever went in New York when I lived there, but whatever. I went a lot here. The great thing is usually this is not a sexist, ageist thing. It's usually older Chinese women
Yes.
pushing around the carts. They come to your table. They speak very little English. Most people with me don't
Right.
speak, except my older daughter, Chinese. And you'd point to the dish.
Yes.
I mean, it's such a great. And so why have they? It's just too labor intensive.
I think it's too labor intensive. So during the pandemic, I mean, I think they were already phasing out before the pandemic,
see.
and then during the pandemic, there's a labor shortage, and also people are probably still concerned about COVID,
That's
and
a
so
very
it
good
just
point,
kind of
yes.
went away, and so people just order now off the
Some
menus.
still have it.
Right. China Pearl in Quincy still has it. Joyful Garden. Watertown still has it. I think maybe on the weekends, maybe something like Hela Moon might have it on the weekends.
We all
too.
went to Helen Chin's 90th birthday at China Pearl in Quincy.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's on your list too.
Yeah, that's on
good
our list too. That was
Yeah.
we like that place in Quincy still. It's been around for
Great.
decades, and the new the China Pearl is in Chinatown. It's been closed for renovation. The
Opening this
owner,
summer.
yeah,
We had
opening-
Brian
Brian
Moy
Moy on,
a
yeah.
couple
I
of
think
weeks
they're
ago, months
opening
ago.
late this summer, and
Yeah.
he said he confirmed that dim sum will return, and there'll be a combination of cart and menu service
Oh,
when
nice.
it returns. But it was great because what I love about the Chinese, the little Chinese ladies is that they're really aggressive.
Oh,
right? They are pushing.
No, that is
they're
totally
pushing
true.
their dumplings on you.
That
Like,
is
don't you
a
want to
wonderful
try this?
point.
They're like lifting it up, right? They're like, don't you want to try this? Come on, come on. They must be paid on commission. Do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think they may
Why-
just be
why would-
loyal to the boss. I don't know what the
Really?
answer
I
is.
think
but
they're
I
paid
love
on
the whole
commission.
experience. It was like in a
Yes.
movie kind of thing.
It is.
Surely that was great public service, and I'm sure you had a little fun along the way. The two of you did a great job. And by the way, the liquor licensing. What's the next? Quickly, what's the next installment on what?
Once a week. One is about how young chefs can't afford to open up in Boston, in large part because of the liquor license. So
there you go.
So they're going to Brookline, they're going to Lynn,
really?
they're going anywhere but Boston now.
There seems to be an awful
really
lot of
too
liquor
good.
licenses in Brookline. I don't know what's going on.
It's great you're
over
doing
there.
it, and I hope it's going to lead to change. Great to
Shirley
see you, Shirley Young.
Shirley Young is a Boston Globe business columnist. She also has a great podcast called Say More. The subject for today, just dropped today, is about the Karen Reed trial. It's a fascinating take. You guys did a great job on that podcast. Shirley, thank you very much. And for the liquor license as well. And for the food. Okay, coming up next. Afternoon.
Oh, wait a second. The full kitchen at Jumbo Seafood, so we can't blame Nicole, which is what Jamie was trying to do, was closed, so there was no pig ear salad.
Okay.
So it's
all
not
right.
her fault.
Well, that's
I'm going to get
fine.
Marjorie some pig ear
Yeah,
salad for
okay.
tomorrow.
No, Marjorie's not going to eat the
Your
pig
name
ear
is Marjorie,
salad.
not Marguerite.
Marjorie, whatever
Thank you.
my name
Okay.
is. Okay, coming up, Afternoon Zoo with naturalist and author Simon Montgomery. We're going to talk about cicadas, we're going to talk about roaches, and we're going to talk about how to save the bees. Maybe beekeeping is not so great about saving the habitat. We're going to find out about that next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Tiny soul food spot in Los Angeles, and when I visited the restaurant, Reynolds put me to work.
I'm gonna put more meat
Lord have mercy.
than the tortilla can possibly wrap around.
Okay, so my sous chef is not budget friendly here.
I'm Elsa Chang. Step into the kitchen with me and the James Beard semifinalist on All Things Considered from NPR News.
today at 4 here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Imagine Exhibitions. Harry Potter, the exhibition, opens September 13th. You can experience the filmmaking of Harry Potter through interactive sets, props, costumes, and more. Tickets at harrypotterexhibition.com. And the Boston Foundation. Believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF. Move equity, move Boston. TBF.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island, who one of his areas of expertise is the state of the Supreme Court of the United States, will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. Now we're joined on Zoom by Cy Montgomery, naturalist and author. I can't believe I was eating a chicken foot while she was waiting to come on the show. Her latest book is Secrets of the Octopus in partnership with Nat Geo. Cy, it's great to see you.
It's great to be with you all, and I'm with Marjorie. I'm not putting a chicken foot.
Me neither. I mean, let's look at his little foot right there in front of me. I can't do it.
Wait a second. Do you eat chicken?
No.
Oh,
she's a vegetarian.
I didn't. Okay, so what is the strangest thing you've ever eaten, if not a chicken foot, Cy Montgomery?
Well, this was a long time ago. I was in Borneo at a Dayak Tiwa, which celebrates. Yeah, I was in the middle of the forest, and this celebrates the joinings of the two halves of the soul, which part at death, and they dig up a corpse and they reburied it in a Samsonite suitcase, actually. And part of the celebration, which went on for days, I discovered, was someone wakes you up in the middle of the night by torchlight and hands you a human skull from which you are supposed to drink tuak, which is liquor, and I don't drink liquor, I don't drink alcohol, flavored with the corpse of a fetal deer. But at that point, I was stunned, and then you were supposed to kiss the mandau, which is the headhunting blade.
Of course you are.
So I just went ahead, when in Rome, and that's probably the weirdest thing I ever
How was it?
Well, I don't like the taste of alcohol, and I don't think it improves with the flavoring of the corpse of a
No, that's a good analysis,
God.
I think.
You're brave. You're a brave woman, Cy Montgomery. Brave woman. So let's get to this bee thing. We've been hearing for a long time that bees are endangered. I know lots of people have kind of risen to the occasion, and they've decided to be cultivators of honeybees, or if that's not the right word, I don't know. But they have honeybees hives, and they take care of them in their home. But then I'm reading these stories that that's not necessarily a great idea for the rest of the bees. So what is the state of honeybees, natural bees? What should we be doing if we're concerned?
Yeah, this is a really fascinating story, and I, too, was really taken aback. In fact, I just read a book that's coming out in a few months called The Honey Trap that goes into this in quite a bit of depth. Remember a few years ago, there was a hive collapse, and a lot of the honeybees just died off, and no one knew what it was. And it turned out it wasn't one single thing, but a whole lot of things. But today, there's actually more honeybees than ever before in existence. It's gone from about 1 billion in 2017 to 2022 to 3.8 billion today.
Wow.
And this is not due to a decrease in the things that were killing them, which was mainly poisons that we put on crops, known as neonicotinoids. It's due to the fact that Italian honeybees, which are a European and Asian species, they're a foreign species, that you can just breed them up like you can chickens or cows or pigs, and people just bred them up again. But what do those numbers of pollinators do to the native bees who were here for millennia before the Europeans came with their Italian honeybees? And it turns out it's not good news for the native bees.
No.
And I was really surprised about this article.
Me too.
The Xerces Society put something out. It's named after a butterfly, a beautiful blue butterfly that went extinct, and it's an invertebrate conservation group. And
First, I didn't realize that we have 3,600 species of native bees here in North America, and that 28% of just our bumblebees in North America, our native bumblebees, are threatened with extinction. And 40% of all our invertebrate insect pollinators, including butterflies and other bees, could be extinct by the end of this century. And mainly it's not because of honeybees, but the honeybees being there and their appetite for pollen is, in fact, depriving native bees of what they need. And what surprised me, too, is that Italian honeybees, although they make honey and we love honey and it is sweet and they do pollinate stuff, they're not as efficient at it as many of our native bees. I didn't realize that tomatoes, for example, are mainly pollinated by bumblebees.
I didn't know that either.
As buzz pollinators, they have to zzz to make all of the pollen fall off. And that Italian honeybees are not really that great at pollinating stuff. And they're terrible at pollinating many of the plants that we don't necessarily use for our agriculture, but are supporting native ecosystems. And so this competition is just one more difficult thing for our native bees. In fact, in London, I read that the Beekeeper Association there said that some parts of that city have 4 times as many hives of Italian honeybees as their parks and gardens can even support.
So what these stories, this Xerces Society that you mentioned, however you pronounce it, said that what we should be doing if we want to save the bees is to plant and create more pollinator gardens, habitat in parks and on farms, reducing pesticides, and are campaigning for bans on pesticides. So I guess that means, what is a pollinator habitat? The plants that the butterflies and the bees like?
And hummingbirds.
And hummingbirds.
So that's another wonderful thing that's going to happen if you plant a pollinator garden.
Okay.
With you're going to get all kinds of beautiful hummingbirds. You're going to get gorgeous butterflies, and you're going to get the bees that don't sting you. Many people don't realize that you can pick up a bumblebee, and if you don't squeeze him or hurt him, he's not going to hurt you either. Bumblebees will just crawl harmlessly across your hands.
Let me tell you something. I'll be holding the bumblebee as soon as Marjorie's eating a chicken foot.
Yeah,
Let me
Marjorie's
just
not
say
eating the chicken foot.
right now. You can hold I'm sure you can do it. Can we move to another creature that I actually know much more about than bees? And it's only because I lived in New York City for 15 years. Cockroaches. I did not know. Well, I have 2 questions. One, I didn't know till this morning that we didn't know where they came from, and apparently we do. You'll fill us in. And secondly, I don't know if this is, BS or not. I have more than once been told that the cockroach is the oldest living thing on planet Earth, that it survived the longest. Do you want to address either of those?
Yeah, I don't think it is the oldest, because probably some sea creature that's tube is the oldest, because we started out. They're actually pretty sophisticated animals. And did you know they can run on their hind legs? They can run upright? They're amazing.
I mean, okay. No, I did not. No, I did not. But,
close your eyes and imagine that.
No, I am imagining that. So where do they come from, and why do I care, actually?
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of cockroaches, but the kind that we're most likely to see in cities that live in our houses and our restaurants are cockroaches that have been called German cockroaches. Now, the reason they're called German cockroaches is because during wartime, when these cockroaches started showing up, people kept blaming them on the Prussians, who were then the Germans, and those who didn't like the Russians called them the Russian cockroach, but they're not from there exactly. They evolved from an Asian cockroach who lived outside until it figured out, I can move indoors with the people. It probably originated in like India or Myanmar and moved with the Islamic dynasties and European colonialism to Europe. And that's how we got them. And one reason, they're a new species. They probably just arose in the last, 2,100 years,
I was
which is
shocked by that,
amazing.
actually.
That is so quick, but they reproduce very quickly, and they're also largely immune to poison. So they evolve really quickly.
Do you
and
like
they're-
them too? Like you like every other living thing
Oh,
there?
you know what? I prefer the Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
Of course, who doesn't?
I know, they're so dear. And they'll stand up and they'll vocalize at you.
Oh.
I remember this was after I think our ferrets were stolen, and I was very upset.
Oh.
I went to visit, this was many years ago, and I went to visit a zoo, and they let me go behind the scenes, and they let me put my arms in with the Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and they went up my sleeves. And it was very comforting.
It was. Okay.
We're going to move on to cicadas.
Well, I feel, I have to say, Marjorie occasionally appropriates a story of mine and is convinced it's hers. But I will tell you, and I want to ask you if you think this was cruel. Actually, it was feeding them. When I lived in New York City, every apartment I ever had, all illegal rent-controlled apartments, they were cockroach infested. And by the way, while I really am freaked out by mice and snakes, I'm fine. I don't want them, but I'm fine with cockroaches. What I would do when I was in a compromised state quite often is that at night I would turn off all the lights, put a piece of cheese on the counter, and then turn off lights and turn them on, and see how long it took for the cheese not to be visible because it was covered in cockroaches. That's not cruel, right? That's sort of feeding them, right?
No, they're delighted.
Okay,
I'm
fine.
sure they're delighted.
Margie, you want to pretend that's yours?
I did that in an apartment I had on Commonwealth Avenue in Berkeley Street a million years ago, when you could live in the Back Bay for like nothing. And yes, we did that regularly.
Do you know that you did that?
I did that regularly, yeah. It was like a game.
I don't think you did.
You put out a piece of cheese, you go in the other room, you turn the lights, and you come back, and you see the cockroaches attacking the cheese.
And you get used to this. I remember in India when we were living on this boat on the Bay of Bengal, you'd wake up in the morning and there would be your toothbrush, and on the bristles, eating the detritus from your toothbrush would be cockroaches. And then you would open the pages of your journal, and in the pages of your journal there would be cockroaches. And I mean, they just were there. We get used to anything. We're very adaptable
Speak for
ourselves.
yourself there. We're talking to Cy Montgomery.
So we talked the other day about what's the lobster place went out of business?
Lobster Pot. It's not going out of Red Lobster. It's not going out of business.
It's bankrupt.
Bankrupt.
It's not going out of business.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting that.
You're okay.
They're bankrupt. But apparently one of the reasons they had to file for bankruptcy is that this endless lobster promotion.
Endless shrimp.
Endless shrimp promotion.
Close
I'm getting
enough.
this all wrong.
No, it's okay. Wrong restaurant.
Yeah, wrong restaurant.
Product.
But this
Okay.
headline, I'm going to get this right. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's with the M town somewhere. But I'm going to get this one right because I'm reading the headline. For edible bug farms, cicadas are noisy lobsters of the trees, which of course made me think of the lobsters and the endless shrimp promotion yesterday.
What's the name of the store that declared bankruptcy?
I don't know. Red Lobster.
Oh, you
Red
did?
Lobster.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Red Lobster.
So what's the question?
So what is this? Cicadas, noisy lobsters in the trees? What is this?
Oh, gosh. Well, there are a lot of them, and they are edible, and they are protein. And when you think of it, a lobster is kind of on the same plan. I mean, it's got an exterior skeleton, an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
And I once heard of a Texan eat a lobster and say, "Best bug I ever ate." So, I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't eat them, but if you don't eat them, somebody else out there will. And all of these cicadas who are emerging in unprecedented numbers, because two different broods are hatching out at the same time in the Midwest and the South, they are going to be a bonanza for all the critters out there who eat them.
You know, speaking of eating them, the reason why I think Marjorie brought this up is that one of the stories, or in fact many of the stories we wrote, said, it's right here. The FDA, thank you, whoever our colleague is who did this. If you have a seafood allergy, don't eat a cicada. The FDA is warning they're so closely related to shrimp and lobster that, if you have, again, as I said, a seafood allergy. So if I like shrimp a little, I love lobster, would I like cicada? I assume you've eaten tons of cicadas. Would I like cicada?
I have not actually eaten cicadas.
I'm shocked.
No. Well, I have a good friend who loves eating cockroaches. But
no, you don't.
God.
You really
but
don't.
Yeah, but he's a bearded dragon. He's a reptile.
Okay.
Then it's acceptable. We're talking to Cy Montgomery.
Okay, so we love to watch the dog show, the Westminster Kennel Club dog show, because it's fun. You know, the hunting breeds and the little toys, and they're all done up to the nines and stuff like that. But this story is about going to pet the breeds at the Westminster Dog Show, which I guess they allow.
Well, the implication of this story is you are, as an attendee.
Yes.
You're entitled to pet all of these show dogs. Is that true, by the way?
Yeah, I thought it might be for the press. I thought perhaps as a member of the press, but then I thought, gosh, I know someone who, Marjorie, you would love to do that, wouldn't you?
Oh yes, it's every Thanksgiving you got to watch. That's the Philadelphia Dog Show, but it's really great. You watch the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and after that you watch the dog show. And but they cut it too short. I guess they're worried about fitting it in on time. They race through it. We need time to get a little more time with the individual pets.
So a couple of things. One, do you think it's cruel? And two, I asked this the other day. I think I asked it of Marjorie, and she said yes. Do you think the dogs, just like did Secretariat, Marjorie's favorite thing, know how great it was? Did the dog, what was it, Sage who won this year?
The little poodle.
Sage, yeah. Do the dogs who win these contests know that they did something great?
Yeah, I think they do.
Really?
I think they do. And, I'm not a big fan of concentrating on appearance, and I'm not a big fan of breeding dogs just for appearance, because this is how you get hip dysplasias, this is how you get like respiratory problems in the short-faced breeds, et cetera. But I do think that the dogs that make it into this inner circle partially do it because they have the personality to love doing that. Because if they don't, your tail is down, your expression is bad, you might show your teeth at a judge. You might just not, so I think the ones who excel partially because they are enjoying it. But boy, I love that story in the Washington Post.
And they call it a form of therapy, a form of joy available to people that were in the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center.
What do you mean, for those who were able to pet them?
Yes, instant serotonin.
This reporter, she'd lost all 3 of her little dogs.
Yeah.
A half ago. They were all, and they lived to 16. She'd obviously taken great care of them, and she just had a baby, and she missed these dogs so much. And for her to be able to just pet every kind of dog, that had to have been a great shot in the arm for her. And I loved this. I loved this story because what she loved about them was not their appearance. She just loved sharing gentle touch.
Yeah.
And the dogs did too.
The thing that makes me feel that I too should be troubled by this is, didn't the woman who was is it a woman who was the trainer of Sage? I think it was a woman.
I don't know.
45 years in the business, is retiring. And I think there's a quote from her in this story saying now that Sage has won this, Sage can, this is not an exact quote, it's like a paraphrase, can just go have fun and be a normal dog, which suggests that, that being trained for your whole life, sort of like these young gymnasts we talk about from time to time, is not fun. Do you know what I mean there, Cy?
Yeah, but I do think that
they like
Olympic gymnasts, for example, love doing that.
Okay.
And love having completed that part of their destiny, perhaps, and then will enjoy the rest of their lives too. At least that's what I hope is the case for these dogs.
Okay, this gives us an opportunity to play for the second time in a week. Our apologies, but we love it so much. One of the best clips from one of the best movies of all time. Here is Fred Willard playing a dog show TV announcer in the great movie Best in Show, and he's learning, as we hear, more about how the judges make their decisions about the dogs. Here it is.
She is really giving him a thorough going over. Are all judges that thorough? I mean, she looks at the teeth.
It's very important that all the attributes are examined. Teeth, eyes, ears, gums.
Am I seeing right? Where's she putting her hands now?
She's just checking out the dog's testicular area to make sure that everything is intact.
Hate to go out on a date with Judge Edie Franklin, have her judge me. That'd be no fun.
Oh my God, that is unbelievable. We're talking to.
I love that show.
Oh my God, it's one of the funniest movies of all. Christopher Guest, right?
Yes, Christopher Guest. He did that whole thing. And, okay, so let's talk about spiders. using their webs.
We're getting all the
as
creepy
giant microphones.
I know. Isn't spider silk amazing? I mean, we keep finding out new stuff about spider silk, but it also is how they hear.
Yeah.
This is amazing to me. I mean, we all know, because you can tell if you've got spider silk all over your house, as do I, because I never vacuum. You know that a spider will respond to prey struggling in its web, and it comes rushing out like it just got a pizza delivery and wraps it in more silk. But it's not just that they can feel that the way we feel things. It functions like listening as well. This I had to unpack this kind of slowly, because what spider silk responds to is not sound pressure waves like our ears do, but the air particles as they're thrust around by sound pressure waves. And this is just interesting to me because it shows that there's more than one way to successfully do something like hear. And people are super interested because this might help us create more sensitive listening instruments than we have.
That's great. That's great.
You know what we talked last week, unrelated to this story, about people complaining about spider webs in their Airbnbs and on places like Cape Cod. And I was thinking to myself, when I have gotten rid of a spider web, which I kind of feel bad about because the poor spider worked so hard on it, but when I've gotten rid of it, it's back in a day. You know, and especially if it's near the water, like on a pier. They love, I think, a lot of spiders that like the water. It is amazing how fast a spider that's not very big can spin this web that can be like a foot in diameter. So what's the deal with the spiders and spinning those webs?
They generate it in these special organs called spinnerets in their abdomens, and they pull it with their back legs out of their bodies. They don't squirt it out. They pull it out. And another cool thing is that many of them, in order to have the fresh, sticky part of the web every day fresh, many of them will actually eat that sticky part and redo it every day. Really? But spider webs are useful. For the longest time, you may have noticed there's a number of Native American designs that feature a spider web.
Yes.
They used to get spider webs and put it over the cradles of their babies to keep away what they called the harm from the air. And what it did was it kept mosquitoes that could carry things like malaria away from their babies. And I had an incident. I was lying in bed trying to read, and a yellow jacket was buzzing around, and I thought, oh darn, I'm going to have to go get a yogurt cup and get the yellow jacket and let him loose. And just then, he got caught in the spider web, and the spider ate him.
Wow. Wait a minute. You were going to get a yogurt cup? Why?
So she could cover it up and take it outside and not kill the damn thing.
But I wonder if there's any particular reason it was a yogurt cup as opposed to just a plain old cup.
Well, a yogurt cup has a nice flat top.
Okay.
And that's...
It's not the smell or the taste of the yogurt.
No. Okay. I wash them out. No, a regular cup would work just fine, but a yogurt is also small and it's useful.
And what's so great is you watch them in the wind, and they can really sustain quite a big wind before they fall apart too. You see them stretching, when the wind comes by. It's really pretty.
Yeah, and other animals know that. For example, hummingbirds gather spider silk and weave it into their nests, so that as their nestlings grow, their nest can stretch.
Cy Montgomery, you prove every time you're with us that there's nobody else on the planet like you. So hello to you, and thank you for yet another wonderful 20 minutes. Great to see you, Cy Montgomery.
Thank you so
really
much, Cy Montgomery. Great to talk to you. We have been speaking with Cy Montgomery, who's our wonderful naturalist and author. Her latest book is Secrets of the Octopus. But Cy Montgomery has got many books. Look her up. They are all wonderful with great pictures as well. Okay, up next, we have been concerned, well, a lot of you have been concerned as well, about bird flu. So we're going to get all our questions answered. Hopefully we have two new guests, one from BU, one from Harvard, is going to tell us all about everything we need to know about birds and birds flu. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library. It's streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
We listen to what matters to you.
I'm Madeline, and I'm from Belmont, Massachusetts. And what matters to me is the vaquitas, which are a type of endangered animal, and there are likely less than 10 of them left in the wild.
I'm Colleen, and I'm from Wellesley, and what matters to me is keeping nature alive.
We're Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts, and what matters to us is helping others with kindness.
Your voice matters. GBH 89.7.
What matters to you?
Support for our programs comes from you. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Yellowface, truth and fiction blur in David Henry Huang's satiric memoir asking the question, who has ownership of a culture? May 31st through June 23rd at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com. And MFS Investment Management. For 100 years, MFS has been committed to helping investors, investment professionals, and institutions build secure futures. You can find active investing strategies and insights at mfs.com.
I'm Boston Public Radio producer Aidan Connolly, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Rhode Island United States Senator Whitehouse will join us. He'll zoom in about 15 or 20 minutes to talk about the Supreme Court and what a mess it is. But first, there's an outbreak of avian influenza spreading throughout the country's chicken population, at least, and beyond. And the virus has also been detected in milk sold in stores in New England. But should we worry? Is there an actual risk to humans? Are we prepared for another outbreak after COVID-19, or is this much ado about not much? Here now to help us answer these questions are two people I spent a ton of time with on television during COVID-19 that I haven't seen in a while. Nahid Badalia, an associate professor of infectious diseases at BU School of Medicine. It's great to see you again. And Bill Hainage is an epidemiologist at Harvard's Chan School of Public Health. Wonderful to see you too, Bill. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for having us. Pleasure.
So Bill just said it was Hainage, like manage.
Oh, Hainage, my apologies.
It's okay. It's okay. I just want to check that out. So, Nahid, let's start with you. You are worried, I think.
Yeah, I think that I am worried, but let me create a distinction. I think that this is a moment in which there isn't as much for the general public to worry about, but there is enough that public health experts should be paying attention and preparing in case the scenario changes. And the reason we're worried is because this virus, the flu, the highly pathogenic avian influenza virus, tends to be very mutagenic. It changes, evolves very fast. And what it's been doing in the last 2 years is evolving to adapt to a lot more mammals. And that, of course, is of concern because we're mammals.
Exactly.
And we're seeing it now in this particular setting in a scenario where it is in dairy cows, where it's close to our food supply and is close to many more humans, an opportunity here in the United States for that interaction. So even if the transmission rate from animals into humans is low, which we've seen, in the 20 years there have been about 900 cases of H5N1. In most cases, the birds are the intermediary. There is a concern of what does this mean about the evolution of this virus, and are we ready if the virus were to change again?
Do you share Nahid's concerns there, Bill?
Yes, I do. I think it's worth noting that we have been tracking H5N1 for a long period of time, but it's also been evolving over that time. And one of the things that flu viruses do is that if two flu viruses infect the same animal, the same bird, they can shuffle up their genetic material and the properties of that virus can then become different. That happened to this, we think, sometime around 2020, somewhere in Europe, and from there it came into the US over the North Atlantic Seaway and then spread throughout the country, like Nahid said, infecting birds and mammals that we were not expecting it to be.
You know, one of the things that I always can't believe, after having lived through COVID-19 and 1 million deaths in this country, which are far more than I think would have happened had we had responsible leadership and a public health infrastructure ready for this, you seem to be saying, Nahid, that the public health community is not ready for this either. We were talking the other day about their vaccinations for birds, which are not being done in significant enough numbers, that livestock is being moved all over the country without testing. It seems to me they're pretty simple things we could be doing to at least assess the current state of affairs, and we're not. So I guess the question is, why not?
Yeah, I think the central concern that I have is that we don't have a full picture. We don't know the denominator, right? We talk about the dairy milk, the milk we've seen is safe with pasteurization, but the thing that concern that I have is that you saw this one human case that was quite mild from a potential interaction with a cow.
This is the Texas guy with the red eyes.
Red
eyes.
Recovered, right? But pretty severe conjunctivitis. If one farmer on one farm with a cow interaction could get that, it's a possibility there's a lot more farmers who may have had some mild infections that we are not detecting, which changes the denominator, which changes our risk assessment. So what I think we're not doing is being able to get better idea of what that surveillance and denominator is. And the second thing is we're making, again, the mistake that we made during COVID, which is we equated having the tools in hand with the ability to get them where they need to be fast enough to make a difference.
Well, I don't want to upset anybody that's eating lunch or queasy, but what happens to birds? I don't know if I should go to Bill or Nahid on this. What happens to birds when what makes them sick? What are the symptoms? We know we saw the gentleman with the very red eyes and the conjunctivitis, but what happens to a cow? What happens to a bird? What kills them?
Well, birds are very different. It's important to note. The specific way that the virus enters cells, which is really important, obvious, is distributed throughout the gastrointestinal tract of waterfowl, which is one of the reasons why birds are very good at being infected and why it transmits via, sorry for lunch people, a fecal oral route.
Okay.
In other animals, including humans, those things that the virus uses to enter cells are distributed in different parts of the body. The things which this one uses are down here in the lower airway, which means if the virus is lucky enough to get into somebody, it causes makes them really, really sick if it gets there. But the other ones, which are distributed up here, and it's much less good at attaching to them, which is why, as of yet, it's not become particularly highly transmissible among humans.
So if it's in your middle section here, it's difficult to breathe, or it's difficult, your gastrointestinal problems?
Well, it's more that this is why we call it highly pathogenic avian influenza. It's because the type of infection that it causes is in a part of the lung, which makes it much more likely. And Nahid is much more able than I am to talk about that.
Okay.
Well, can we get back to your public health concerns, Nahid? I don't know if you answered why we're not doing what you say are the common sense things we should be doing. And the longer this goes, are public health officials, like on the national level, taking this as seriously as it appears the two of you think they should, or are we still not there?
Yeah, I will say that this is not a one-player game, right? It's not just the federal government. I think you have state public health officials, you have the industry, you have general public, right? All of us are actors. Academics are actors, scientific researchers are actors. I have seen a pickup in activity from the federal government. You know, the new introduction from USDA in terms of introducing testing, one can argue about it, whether it goes far enough to get a sense of how many cows may be infected, the work by CDC to try to get research done. What I'm not seeing is enough access to those populations, those farmers on the front line who may be potentially at risk. And this matters not just for their health, but it matters because the more chances this virus gets to adapt to a human, experience a human's physiology, the more chances there are that it might have a reassortment where it might get better at infecting humans. And in general, by the way, before this case in Texas, it just presents like a really bad flu. That's
By the way, one of the problems is a lot of these farmers are not even letting inspectors in to take a look at their livestock or their chickens or whatever the hell it is. So they're part of the problem too.
Well, I think it's really important to public health. You really don't want to be distancing yourself or alienating any part of the people you want to be able to be working with. And so it's very important to be able to maintain good relationships with agriculture. On the other hand, I don't think we can ignore the elephant in the room that the last few years has made that more difficult.
Can we talk humans for a second, then work backwards, because we've touched on milk a couple of times. What you said, Nahid, a minute ago, I just want to be clear, raw milk is a no-no, and pasteurized milk allegedly kills whatever concerns we have. You're nodding in agreement. That's yes, correct?
Yeah, and I was going to say, there's pretty good evidence that pasteurization generally kills a lot of other infectious diseases. So with the data that we have right now, I'm drinking milk every morning, so I feel confident with the data we have.
So one more question about humans for you, Bill, is my understanding is, and hopefully we're not going to get to this point, but we do have two humans, and I remember the infamous day when Donald Trump was in the White House press room and saying, we only have 10 cases, what's the big deal? Well, now we only have 2 cases, what's the big deal? We have vaccines, unlike last time, that don't have to be generated from scratch that exists that could treat this if people knew early enough that they had a problem. Am I right about that?
We have some, it does look as if this particular virus does have something which is a pretty good match for some of the vaccine candidates we could...
Pre-existing vaccines.
Yeah, we have something which we could start working with.
You don't seem very optimistic about that.
I'm reasonably optimistic about that. But as I point out, we have no evidence right now that this is transmitting between humans. Like we were just saying, the concern is that there's just a lot of virus in a lot of animals, so there are more ways that humans can become infected, but not that humans are transmitting to each other.
Understood.
Were that to happen, it would not necessarily be with one of the vaccine strains that we could work with.
We're talking to Nahid Badilia from BU School of Medicine and Bill Manage of Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health on bird flu. You know, Bill, you just mentioned that, I think that you said that getting inspections of these big farms where the chickens might be has become more difficult in the last few years. Is it because of regulations being loosened, or what were you talking about?
Well, I think there are multiple factors, and it depends on exactly where you are. The political context of the United States over the last few years has been shifted in such a way that public health has found its life to be basically more difficult because of the fact that people recall COVID, they recall the disruptions, and hey, I understand it was very disruptive. But on the other hand, those were the disruptions which happen when you lose control of a virus. We do need to keep our focus on public health because you know, if you do not turn the light on to look at what might be there, you won't see it. And if it's something nasty, you would like to see it so you can start taking action.
And I assume the reason some farm owners would not want the inspections is because they're afraid if the flu is found that will be a financial disaster.
Well, there are multiple factors that could be on operation here. In some parts of the country, some of the workers on the farms may themselves be undocumented.
Oh,
and they may
okay.
be unwilling to be in contact with what they consider to be the authorities. So there's a lot of stuff that happens at these kind of interagency, places where the jurisdictions become contested. And this is something that we just have to work with.
You know, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
I was going to say there is the other economic side of this as well, right? You've seen stories now about, so USDA is offering financial incentive to get tested, including, giving farmers a certain amount of recompensation in case, something
if they have to kill birds or cows, they get some subsidies?
No, for cows, for farms that may be affected by H5N1, the amount of money that might help support getting the farms over, because what's happening, and to your question, Marjorie, in cows, the presentation has been a drop in milk production. Fever, diarrhea, drop in milk production, huge concentration of virus in mammary glands, which is leading to, of course, a huge amount of virus in the raw milk, which is what we're seeing also spread the virus on the farm itself. So to them, there is also the economic impact of the loss of the milk production itself. So there is a moment, I think there's a careful moment in public health where we could find a place where it is helpful for the farmers and helpful for the scientists if we can strike the right course.
Can we step back from this just for a second? Obviously,
actually, Jim, if I could
sure.
just jump in on one point.
Of course.
I mean, this is a really good point because one of the things you need to do is to help people do the right thing. One of the stuff that happened in COVID was it was harder for people who perhaps were working 2 jobs and needed the pay to be able to stay home if they felt sick. And that's the type of issue that we need to be able to support people.
Yeah, but Bill, that's if we're in a sane society. And no, I'm serious. It was a perfect segue to what I was going to say. We were lucky enough to have Dr. Fauci with us one day before he left, and he was really honest about his concern about this anti-science agenda that Trump on down has fed. So it's not just having the resources or knowing what to do. There's so many science skeptics right now that still think they were sold a bill of goods. So when you do what you do for a living, how do you confront, I don't just mean individually, but I mean as a class of public health leaders? By the way, every time you were on our show, after my show, Greater Boston, the reaction was spectacular. People felt so thankful they actually got information, but that's a subset of the population. A lot of people don't want the information because you're all full of it. How are you in your, I'm serious, how are your industry, how are you confronting this know-nothingism that is affecting what you do? Bill?
I'm happy to go.
He's looking at you, so go ahead.
I have my own bill of things to share, but...
I mean, I think that it's important to just keep reiterating that you are going to be straight with people and tell them what you know and stick to the facts, try to avoid speculating.
Is that working for you?
Yeah, somewhat, but it also depends on the audience. With this accent, there are some TV networks I'd be reluctant to go on. But NPR listeners are going to be, perhaps maybe a little more tolerant of it.
How about you, Nahid? What do you want to say?
I think we have to acknowledge that the moment you describe in our current society is real. that there truly is an anti-scientific movement.
Yeah.
There is an anti-vaccination movement, and it keeps me up at night. What will happen? Honestly, I kid you not, a year ago I said, oh my God, I can't even imagine how much anti-vaccination sentiment there is, how much active disinformation there is. I worry if an avian influenza event happens, how are we going to get beyond that? There have been 80 bills proposed or passed in laws in the last 2 years at state levels that limit public health authorities. What does that mean for the next time there's a public health emergency? So it's not just individuals entrusting, getting the trust back at the individual levels, but also what's happening at the legislative level and what that's going to do to the power of public health institutions in those states.
And when you say limit the power of public health, what kind of things does that translate into?
Yeah, so those bills go everywhere from vaccine mandates to masking to isolation and and quarantine. Which, by the way, I was part of the Ebola response like a long time ago, and I remember coming back and getting quarantine here in the United States. Nobody had an issue with that. It's so interesting how we got politicized during COVID and the isolation. So. Those different authorities that public health powers have, multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, right? All of a sudden, states may not have the right to isolate somebody who has a very dangerous infectious diseases because of individual rights and the courts and potentially the states supporting that. So it's a range of kind of public health powers that are going to be affected, which will roll out if there's already sentiment that's being bred in that says, don't listen to anything about H5N1. It's all trying to rehash COVID again.
Bill Hanich, we only have 30 seconds because we have a United States Senator kind enough to be waiting for us. So the average person who's not a lunatic and who is not a skeptic, who is paying attention, what should they be looking for in the news that would cross the threshold to where greater concern enters the picture? What's that objective reality?
It's all about the amount of transmission, and in particular transmission from human to human. If anything would happen there, then that would be quite seriously worrying. And I think that, to come back to what we were saying earlier, what we need for that is surveillance. We need situational awareness, because it's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can't feel the disturbance in the Force if you're not actually figuring out how much the Force is changing.
Beautiful
over time.
image, 10 things. It's great to see you two again. Thank you so much for your time. We really
thank you
appreciate it.
very much, and thank you for helping us understand this. We have been speaking with BU School of Medicine's Nahid Badilia and Bill Manage of Harvard's... Hanich.
I got it wrong and you got it wrong.
I said Bill Manage.
I've only known
You've
him
gotten
for 4
my
years.
name wrong. I love it.
Okay.
We're both
Bill
pathetic.
Hanich from Harvard's TH School of Public Health. My apologies. I'm sorry.
Right. Thank you both regardless.
Next, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island is zooming in. He's our man in D.C. when it comes to the Supreme Court ethics problems now with fake facts on the court, with continuing corruption, and as you know, trust in the United States Supreme Court, unfortunately, is diminishing. We'll talk with Sheldon Whitehouse next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Chef Elisa Reynolds runs My Two Cents, a tiny soul food spot in Los Angeles. And when I visited the restaurant, Reynolds put me to work.
I'm going to put more meat
Lord have mercy.
than the tortilla can possibly wrap around.
Okay, so my sous chef is not budget friendly here.
I'm Elsa Chang. Step into the kitchen with me and the James Beard semifinalist on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Our Time on Earth. This immersive exhibition celebrates the power of creativity to shape the future of our planet. On view now until June 9th. Tickets and more at PEM.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan, with you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom by Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, chair of the Senate Committee on the Budget and the leading voice on ethics. You remember ethics, Marjorie? Remember that?
Vaguely.
Younger
yeah.
in the United States court system. Senator Whitehouse, it's great to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me back on.
Well, it's so funny because when Jim texted me the other day about the news about the Supreme Court Justice Alito with the upside-down American flag on his lawn, his line was, "Oh my God, we have to see if we can get Sheldon Whitehouse on the line to talk to him about this." So we're very glad we have a chance to talk to you about this, Senator Whitehouse, because it's very upsetting. I mean, is nothing going to happen here? It seems as though nothing has happened except a few GOP senators saying Alito shouldn't have done it, and end of story. Is that it?
So far, I think the Judiciary Committee is going to ask Justice Roberts some questions about this mess. But I think the real pressure is going to come from the Judicial Conference. David Barron, our First Circuit Chief Judge, sits on it. Will Smith, a former Rhode Island District Court Chief Judge, sits on it. It's a very distinguished panel, and I think they're getting increasingly fed up with the way the Supreme Court justices are behaving, and they have fairly considerable authority to look into recusal and disclosure and other questions. They probably have to actually assert it. But I think which straw finally breaks the camel's back? The fundamental problem here is that nobody investigates any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's not knowing what Thomas knew about his wife's insurrection activities when he ruled on those cases, whether it's not knowing what really transpired with the forgiven $250,000 loan for his motor coach, and did he even pay taxes when that taxable event took place, or the really bizarre and multiply unethical interview that Alito gave in the Wall Street Journal editorial page of all places, and now the flag saga, where for facts we have to count on a self-serving interview with Fox News. The whole thing is ridiculous.
I don't want to jump around too much because I want to hear what you thought when you first saw that upside-down flag photograph from, I think it was 2020, outside his house. But when you mentioned a minute ago, what did Clarence Thomas know about his wife's involvement in the attempted insurrection? It seems to me, and please correct me if you disagree, Senator, even if he knew nothing, which, let me be euphemistic, strains credibility, he knows it now. And it seems to me that knowing it now is enough that an ethical judge would say, the appearance of impropriety at minimum is such that I can't sit on this case. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right about that. And indeed, when the first case came out regarding the January 6th investigation, you could arguably say this whole thing is a complete bolt from the blue. But by the time the case, I forget if it was Arizona or Nevada, the investigation where she'd been also involved out with the Stop the Steal effort in Arizona.
Yeah.
By then it had been on the front page of every paper. So, and he has some degree of duty to discover. Once he knows, hey, were you involved in this? I need to know, because I need to know whether I need to recuse myself. Instead, the whole thing just gets completely spackled over with omerta.
So when you first saw the photograph in the New York Times, the Jody Cantor story, what was your reaction, Senator Whitehouse?
I thought it was a Photoshop. I couldn't believe it.
You mean that, right? You mean that?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's horrifying.
So can we get back? David Barron, by the way, in the spirit of full disclosure, his wife is a weekly guest on our show, Juliette Kayyem. She was just here an hour ago, actually. I don't understand what power they have here. You were suggesting they have some real power as opposed to rhetorical power vis-a-vis recusal and that sort of thing. That's news to me. Do they?
I think they do. I think they can make a lot of rules for judges, and that includes the justices. The justices have pretended for some time the Judicial Conference can only make rules about other federal judges, but not the justices. But their conduct belies that, because when, for instance, there needed to be an investigation into the first round of billionaire Harlan Crow to Justice Thomas gifts of yacht and jet travel, that was referred to the Judicial Conference, which took the matter up, signed it to a committee. Rather half-baked investigation was done. The thing was sort of buried and smoothed over. But through all of that episode, Thomas never said, oh, no, you don't have any authority over me. He went along with the process. So I think they are subject to rules that the Judicial Conference can apply. And, you know, if the rules are that awful for the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts chairs the proceedings, so he is in a very good place to steer bad ideas away. So I think they can do a lot. They already have done investigations into these disclosure violations. The disclosure violation investigation into Crow to Thomas Yacht and Jet Travel 2.0 is still ongoing there. And the critical piece of that is that if they think that there is cause to believe that Thomas's misconduct may have been willful, they're under a legal obligation to refer the question of willfulness for further investigation by the Attorney General, which is really important because the Attorney General has all sorts of investigative resources at his disposal, and there's hardly likely to be the same kind of back-scratching mutual judicial clubbiness. And the Attorney General has other enforcement authority. So when he's looking at this particular question, he can also look at whether it looks like false statements were filed in violation of 18 U.S. Code 1001, or he can look into whether there were tax filings that were made, or whether that Thomas was cheating on his taxes as well as not reporting on his forms.
Well,
so you want it to be in the Attorney General, and that would be a great handoff if they make it, which I hope they will. They should.
We're talking to Sheldon Whitehouse, United States Senator from Rhode Island.
But assuming this is as outrageous as it seems to me, Clarence Thomas' wife involved with the election denial forces and Clarence Thomas ruling on Trump's immunity or not immunity, and the whole election case and all these things, the documents and everything else, and assuming that this is unusual that a Supreme Court justice would see him by the flag on his lawn, even though he blamed his wife. I mean, I'm sure he saw the flag, he couldn't miss it, walking in and out of his house for those several days, which seemed to be lining him up with the people that thought the election was stolen. This seems to me such a big deal that what is preventing Roberts from, he's got a bully pulpit, or the other justices or somebody from saying.
The three liberal justices, for example.
Why don't they say this? I mean, Roberts used to talk about how he's concerned about the reputation of the court. Why don't they say something? I don't get it.
I don't know. It's very frustrating. There's sort of an omerta about each other that plays out through all of this. But when it's so obviously wrong, there comes a time when if you don't call it out, you take on a kind of complicity.
Yes.
In it. And I think for these other judges to act as if there's nothing going on here, that none of this is a big deal, that it's all fine for the court, and this is the way judges are supposed to behave, which is the way that they have framed all of this, is just really indecent and very, very factually wrong. And those are bad places for courts to be. Set aside the fact that, they are perfectly capable set the Judicial Conference aside. Nothing says that the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice, who's its administrative chief, can't say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hire a couple of people to screen complaints, and the legit ones, we're going to hire a couple of staff attorneys to look into them, and you all are going to give statements to the staff attorneys when there's a question. And once we know what the facts are, we're going to bring in some of the circuit court chief judges who are very distinguished senior people, and we'll let them let us know what they would do in their circuits if this kind of behavior was done by one of their members. And now you've got everything you need. You got the investigation, you've got the fact finding, you've got the accountability statement. You know, to go on Fox News is not an accountability moment.
No.
You can lie on Fox News with impunity, but if an official comes to you and asks you a question and you give that official a false answer, you've now violated federal law. You are now subject to criminal prosecution. So the discipline of having an official statement is so important. And then even if they can't sanction the Supreme Court justices, they could at least, as Ben Franklin used to say, put the straight stick down next to the crooked stick, and it becomes pretty apparent who's straight and who's crooked.
We're talking to Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse about the sorry state of the Supreme Court. You know, you've written a lot about some of these justices coming up with false facts or making up facts in the decisions they've rendered. What were you talking about?
Well, the worst ones were probably the Citizens United false facts that they could unleash unlimited amounts of money into politics and there wouldn't be any danger of corruption because all of the spending would be transparent and voters could make their own judgment about whose voice they were hearing and whether they merited belief. And of course, now we're several $1 billion in dark money election spending, disproving that fact. I think most people thought that was a false fact the day that they decided it. But afterwards, as the dark money poured into the elections, it became incontrovertible that they had been wrong about that their fact had been false, and yet they wouldn't go back and clean it up. The false fact got them to the result that they wanted, and on they went. The other was throwing out the Voting Rights Act provision in Shelby County based on completely unsupported fact-finding that the state of racial relations in the southern states that were subject to preclearance had now gotten to a point where none of this was necessary any longer, that we were in a new day and there was no need any longer. Well, that wasn't consistent with the evidence from the Congress. That wasn't consistent with a record in a lower court. They just made that up. And they make it up at the end of the day when there's nobody who can correct them. The first time you see these manufactured facts is when they come down in a decision, and now everybody has to live with it.
We're talking to Sheldon Whitehouse, who must be a hell of a lot of fun at a cocktail party, I'll tell you. So I know I'm speaking, Senator, for Marjorie when I say we both believe that the majority of the Supreme Court is consciously delaying the decision in the immunity case to help Donald Trump not face trial on insurrection-related charges before the election. Do you subscribe to that theory?
I do. I didn't at the beginning, and I had hopes that what we'd see is a really rapid 9-0 decision, and the Supreme Court would use this opportunity to reclaim some of its integrity and credibility. And instead, it just delays and delays and delays and delays. You remember when they wanted to put a Republican president in Bush v. Gore?
I remember that.
Yes, we do.
How long did it take for them to render the decision after oral argument? One day.
Was it a day?
1 day.
Yeah.
And here months and months and months go by to protect the Republican presidential nominee from having to face up to rule of law like every other citizen.
I have a couple, I'm really glad you're here, by the way, Sheldon Whitehouse. I know Marjorie is too. You mentioned a role Merrick Garland can play. Speaking of lack of expedition, I also think I speak for Marjorie, saying one of the reasons we're in this mess with Trump and him running out the clock till November, or at least attempting to run out the clock on probably everything except a verdict in the election interference case in Manhattan, is because Merrick Garland took so long to moved at least the federal cases. Obviously, it has nothing to do with Georgia, nothing to do with Manhattan. But the documents with the Trump's legal counsel, Judge Aileen Cannon, and the insurrection-related things. Do you think Garland has moved as quickly as he needed to?
Well, once he brought in special counsel Jack Smith, those decisions were out of his hands. So, and I have a lot of confidence in Jack Smith. I think that he really wants to get these cases to trial, and he's doing his very best to do it. So, people say, well, why doesn't he appeal to the 11th Circuit to move Judge Cannon along? I think that that's within the range of his prosecutorial judgment as to what the best way to proceed is. So I wish that were underway, and I wish that he'd cleared that up and that the 11th Circuit were looking at what was behind her rather extravagant delays. But it's hard for me to find fault since I'm not, trying those cases and in the thick of the investigation and the trial prep.
We're willing to find fault for you, Senator. Are you worried as somebody who's been so deeply committed to the ethics and the integrity of the justice system, when the average person sees what's going on with the Supreme Court? I don't just mean delaying decisions, but the grifting by the Thomases, not just Clarence Thomas, but the things we discussed about Thomas Alito, and it's not just them. When they read about Aileen Cannon and the conventional wisdom from most impartial experts that she is acting like she's on Trump's legal team, that the natural product of that is declining lack of faith in the justice system. And when Donald Trump walks out of the courtroom and starts trashing every single judicial official that he can, some in violation of a gag order, some not. Do you worry about what the long-term impact of all this is on the average American's faith in the judiciary?
I do, and I think it is somewhat corrosive. But look on the other side. I mean, if there's a real peril in our society right now, it's that people who are bullies and have huge resources can lie with impunity and just, trash other people's lives. And whether you're E. Jean Carroll, who was always going to be rolled by Trump's bombast, or whether you're the moms from Sandy Hook who are getting tormented by that sick InfoWars character who was pretending that they had manufactured the murder of their children, or, tedious little election equipment manufacturing company that suddenly the biggest mouthpiece on the planet, Fox News, accuses of being part of a election stealing conspiracy. None of them had a shot until they got into an honest courtroom, and then suddenly, bang.
Yeah.
Big judgments have come in. So I think for all of the political effort to degrade the prospects of an honest courtroom, the honest courtrooms are showing up and bringing justice where there wasn't going to be any otherwise.
Senator, one last question for me. You mentioned before that there were some good judges and some other vehicles by which that Alito and Clarence Thomas could be looked at and have to answer questions and stuff. How likely do you think that is to happen? And if so, how soon?
I think, every time one of these degrading and disappointing episodes takes place, it builds more energy, both, I hope, in the Chief Justice, and I'm confident in the Judicial Conference to understand that they have to step up a lot more, that these are not ordinary days. We went for, 240 years? With Supreme Court justices not needing to be investigated because they didn't get themselves into terrible trouble.
Or presidents, for that matter.
So it was like a moot question. Like, how do you investigate a Supreme Court justice? Who cares? They haven't been misbehaving. Now suddenly they're misbehaving like crazy. And I think the question of how you investigate them is a very real one. And I don't think the answer can be, we don't. It can't be that we have rule of law for everybody in the United States except the Supreme Court justices.
Senator Whitehouse, I know I speak for Marjorie. Really appreciate your time always, and we hope you come back again soon. Thanks for your work, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me back on.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who is written wonderful stuff and done wonderful stuff in Congress about the Supreme Court and the declining reputation of the Supreme Court, for good reason, actually. Up next.
Whoa, we should say one more thing. I meant to pick up on this. He, in passing, mentioned dark money.
Yes.
He's done tutorials on the floor of the Senate during his allotted time or off the Senate that are the most brilliant, informative pieces about where the money and support comes for some of the justices who have not been true to, let's call it, the Constitution. So check them out.
Yep. Up next, with the skyrocketing cost of housing, sometimes the closest we can get to living in a gorgeous home is simply touring their open houses, Jim. We've all done it.
I've done it.
I've done it many times. Other times, though, it's just nice to have an available bathroom at the open house. More on that after the break. We're opening the lines on open house segments. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Aaron Lansky. He spent a lifetime building the Yiddish Book Center, one of the country's leading Jewish cultural institutions. And along the way, he saved a language and a culture. He joins us to talk about why he's stepping down as president and what he'll do next. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you and The Huntington, presenting Tony Stone, the remarkable true story of the first woman to shatter expectations and play pro baseball on a men's team. May 17th through June 16th at the Huntington Theater, huntingtontheater.org.
And the Boston Foundation, believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF, move equity, move Boston. TBF.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browder. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, back here on Friday. Sadly, we have not much time for this because we really were interested in talking to the senator, but this is a really important topic. According to the Greater Boston Association of Realtors, the average cost of a home in Greater Boston is $950,000 last month, which means for the average person without access to that kind of money, the next best option isn't buying, but merely enjoying the temporary spoils of an open house tour. We were inspired by a great piece in the Washington Post about the odd experiences people have had with these open houses. We're talking about venomous snakes on the porch, prospective buyers. Well, they said it in the Washington Post, stinking up the bathroom while they're touring the place.
That was awful.
Also, tenants who have to awkwardly interact with strangers, peeking into their bedrooms and their closets. Our number is 877-301-8970 for calls and texts. What's the most bizarre experience you've had touring an open house? Have you ever enjoyed going to a gorgeous home and imagining the good life? And by the way, let me say, I assume I'm speaking for you. I've been to probably 500 open houses when I had no intention. I go when I'm on vacation to open houses for fun with no intention to buy. We want to know if you have. For your renters, we're not excluding you. If you've ever been to an apartment showing, the current tenants are still there. How thoroughly do you really poke around? And a separate side issue, as I said, if you can't find a bathroom, is it that egregious if you see the open house sign on a lawn and you just say, I'm going to be a prospective home buyer and use that bathroom? The number is 87. It's very hard to find a public bathroom.
Or not use the bathroom.
Exactly. 877
flower vase situation.
301-8970. Want to know your experiences and if you experience the joy of an open house even when you're not in the market. How about you?
Well, in a rather hostile act, that was what a person did. They used the flower vase instead of the bathroom.
At your place?
No, in the story.
Oh, in the story.
And
I'm sorry.
And the people couldn't understand what the stench was, and they had to do an investigation. They found it was coming from the flower vase. I think you get where
Would
I'm
you
going
use the
there.
bathroom if you were in an open house?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I would not do that. But I had no idea all this stuff was going on at open houses. Not only the flower vase situation, but they talk about people. I guess you would want to make sure if you had like drugs in your house that you hid them away, because apparently people in open houses, they're not just going through the medicine cabinets, they might be looking for illicit drugs that might be around the house. So you had to be secure all your belongings. People steal people's prescription drugs. At one house, they found this urn labeled with a sweet message to the deceased. The human remains were in the kitchen cabinet in the urn that somebody found. Someone left that behind. Then somebody, listen to this, these two people came in together into the open house. One of them was talking to the real estate agent while the other one went upstairs with a crowbar and broke into the safe
Who hasn't done that?
and stole all the jewelry. And I guess, I mean, what are you laughing at?
Well, I mean, these are rather outlying. Most of us don't go in with crowbars.
We don't go in with crowbars.
I think it's a vicarious thing. I really get, and I can't explain it, I get huge joy. I love where I live, by the way. So I'm not going anywhere. I love my house. I get colossal joy. Maybe it's that voyeuristic thing. Don't you love looking at either other people's houses, or you look at a house before someone buys it or rents it, and then once you know them, you know what their thing is there. I mean, I think it's fabulous.
Jim, that's why I bought a dog, so I could have an excuse to walk slowly around the neighborhood looking in people's windows.
You do like doing that, don't you?
I do like doing that. When you go to an open house, the thing is staged, so everything looks absolutely perfect. And what you discover is that people have a lot of bathrooms now. My open house lately has been more bathrooms than bedrooms. It's a trend. And somebody just texted, they said, I flushed every toilet, every apartment I've ever toured, got to check the water pressure. And that's
huge.
True.
That's a big deal.
You do have to check the toilet, and you have to check the shower to make sure the water pressure.
You're conflating two things, by the way,
Well,
if I may.
I am.
There are legitimate open house visits, which we've all been on. There are, what should I call them, voluntary, non-mandatory visits where you have no intent to buy, you couldn't afford to buy,
That's
you
right.
already have a place you're happy with, just because it's a fun activity.
It is a fun activity.
It is a fun activity.
Well, neighbors are often the biggest people at open houses is the neighbors on the street, but I guess the real estate agents don't mind that, because then they figure that there's competition for the home, even though the neighbors have no intention of buying it. So neighbors, and then they can tell people stories about the previous owners, and that's kind of fun. They can gossip.
Did you read also in that story, before we get to your calls at 877-301-8970, that some people will go to an open house at a place they want, and because there are a lot of bidders, they'll stand in the open house and say, like it used to be a meth lab or something.
Yeah.
They say in the story, even if it's not true, in the hopes that it'll scare off other prospective buyers.
But apparently, if the house used to be a meth lab, there's a legal obligation to disclose that.
It is?
You know what I always wonder about?
Where did Walter White live?
Murder houses.
Yeah.
Where people got murdered.
Didn't your cousins own the...
Well, in Lizzie Borden's house, but it was not the house that the murders were committed in. It was the house that Lizzie moved to after she was acquitted of the murders. We used to spend our childhood looking for the axe, of course.
Is that true?
Absolutely. We figured Lizzie hid the axe in the house somewhere. Yeah, it was a beautiful house, too.
Was it?
Anyway, 877-301-8970. What is your behavior like at open houses? Is it kind of a hobby for you on a Saturday or Sunday? Instead of the yard sale, you go to the open house and see what's going on in your neighbor's house down the street. Dee in Concord, what do you think?
Hello, Dee in Concord.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was living in Cambridge. A house across the street from me was being renovated, and on a sleepy summer day, there was an open house, and I wanted to see what I had been watching. I went in with my boyfriend. We walked around. We got to the third floor. There was a porch off the master bedroom, and we walked out. And the wind blew the door shut, and we were locked on the third floor.
That's pretty good.
There was not enough traffic in that day for the agent to even notice that we were up there. And I guess the only other thing I'd say that was really funny about it was, as we're killing time up there, I heard for the first time the story of how my boyfriend had gotten locked in the penguin house at the Central Park Zoo at closing time. So anyway.
That's a pretty good story there, Dee. Sort of like Jamie getting locked in the men's room, allegedly, at GBH. Any reference that gets us to that is one that makes us happy. Dee, thank you very much for the call. For like 4 hours, remember that?
I do.
No one even noticed he was missing. That's really the troubling part of the story, you know what I mean? Don't take that personally, Jamie. We love you.
Okay.
Some of us do.
Down on the road, I went to an open house where I was told to remove my shoes. I did not have socks on and had not washed my feet that day. So I left.
Yeah.
I've been asked to take off my shoes. Haven't you going to open houses?
I think
Lots of people
so.
don't want any kind of marks left on the floor. Listen to this one. Not an open house, but I knew of a veterinary tech who used to make house calls for people's pets, then use the bathroom and steal the client's prescription drugs.
By the way, people do a lot of that. So, a lot of work, service, people who do work in your house. I'm not indicting the whole class of people. Most of them are wonderful and hard workers. There's a lot of theft of prescription drugs. Do you not know that?
I did not know that.
This discussion is going off track. This whole idea, I thought, was it's like a vicarious thrill for somebody. If you want to do something fun, don't want to go to a movie or go out for a drink, you go check out a nice house down the street.
Well, okay, I may be off track with this one, but listen
Go
to
ahead.
this. My
Sure.
house is a suicide house. We
That's
found
great.
out
That's
after
great.
we closed on the house.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Okay, good. Hey, Susan in Manchester, New Hampshire. Let's see if you can get us back on track. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi.
Hello? I wake you?
No, I'm just trying to get off speaker.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
good. What's up? Okay.
So, years ago,
Yeah.
my sister-in-law wanted to buy a house, and the realtor said, there's nothing in the price range, you'll have to get a condo.
Uh-huh.
So, she insisted. So the realtor said, okay, I'll take you and I'll show you what's out there.
Okay.
So I went with her on a Saturday.
Yeah.
The first house, we walked in, and the owner hadn't left. He had all these pamphlets from AA on the coffee table. He was sitting there, and I felt so bad that he should have canceled. Whatever. So we move on. We go into the bathroom,
Yeah.
and it must have been before the code. When you're standing at the sink, if you step backwards, you would step into the tub. It was in the floor.
That's a problem.
I look out the bathroom window.
Yeah.
There's an abandoned in-ground pool, empty, and there's sewage bubbling in the yard. We go down the hall,
Sounds good.
and as we're opening the third bedroom door, he says, oh, that's the iguana's room.
So
it's like
jeez.
a 24-inch iguana.
So how much did you pay for the
Standing on
place?
floor. He was standing on the floor.
That's
I said, I'll be in the car. So I go to the car, and then they come out, and they say, he says, okay, I'll show you one more property.
Yeah, sure.
It's a lakefront in another town.
Okay.
We go to this cottage. It's like Heidi's grandfather's place.
Yeah.
It's all dark wood. There's a ladder up to the loft.
Yeah.
I walk to the kitchen window thinking I got to get out of here.
Sure.
I look out the backyard. A goat jumped up on the table.
Of course. And what'd you do about that?
I left.
Okay.
Okay.
And she bought a condo.
I'm hoping there's not a third house in the story. Is there, or is that it? Because those are really good.
I would have walked home.
You would have.
walked home.
Okay. Susan, thank you for two excellent house visit stories. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the no. Was she trying? I forgot. Was she trying to buy? She was actually in the market, right?
I couldn't hear that well, Jason. It wasn't a great connection. Molly from Medford went to an open house on the street, and they found a rat in the toilet.
That's a problem. By the way, do you know we did a rat in the toilet segment? Were you here for that a couple weeks ago?
Yes, I think so.
There was one. I don't want to badmouth the community because I love Somerville. There's a rat in the toilet in somebody's house in Somerville.
Really?
Yeah, a couple days ago.
It's an epidemic in Somerville. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it's an epidemic.
Let's
I'm saying
hope
it's a
not.
rat in one person's toilet.
Well, it happens, Jim.
Does anybody even talk to us about the thrill of going to an open house just for fun on a? By the way, I will talk about it. I went to Vancouver a few years ago. Oh, you did, Jim? Yeah. What did you do while you were there? One day, I think it was raining or something, so we couldn't do what we intended. We looked up open houses, and remember when there used to be real estate pages 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And we went all day. We went to open houses. What do you think of that?
I think that's very exciting,
Thank
Jim.
you very
It's
much.
been a wonderful day. on
That
your
actually
vacation.
was a wonderful day.
Greg in
Different
Athol.
city. We went to high-end places.
Well, I mean, if somebody's
Greg,
some
stick
places
around.
though, they don't let you in. I mean, have you noticed you have to be like a serious kind of buyer? They're not going to let you into some of these
If you
high-end
dress
houses.
decently, they'll let you in. They're not asking you for your tax
I
return.
don't know. I think that they have rules about who can get into
They
these
do?
very snazzy houses. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if they have like a $4 million house or something, not anybody gets into the $4 million
Okay, fine,
house.
Marjorie.
Okay. Greg and Athol, what do you
Hello,
think, Greg?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. First time, long time. Glad I could get a hold of you.
Thank you.
So the story is, for the first house that I bought, my realtor, God rest his soul, we walked up to the house, and he was standing on the front. He goes, bit of a surprise. And we're like, oh, everything all right? He's like, yeah, everything's fine. So we walk through the house, and we're checking out first floor. Everything's fine. The basement, everything's fine. Get up to the second floor. I'm wondering where the surprise is. And we get to the last door, and the door's shut. And I said, what's going on here, Tony? He goes, so the owner didn't know that today was the inspection. And we said, oh, okay. So where is she? Well, she's inside the master bedroom. We said, well, all right, we've seen enough. That's fine. No, let's go in and check it out. So he opens the door. He starts going through the closets. Meanwhile, the owner is under the sheets on the bed. Just her outline. I said, you got to be kidding me. I was like, Tony, we got to go. No, you got to check the closet space here, this and that. I was like, Tony, we got to go. And then all of a sudden, the owner starts speaking up from underneath the sheets. Yo, throw in an extra $50 and I'll be in their house with you. I was like, we got to go. We got to leave right now.
Oh,
that was
my
actually
gosh.
a pretty good story there, Greg. Thank you for your first call sharing that. That was pretty good. Thank you. Michael from Concord says, during an open house we had 6 years ago, someone stole some undies from me. I think that's not that atypical. And Julian Roxbury had a really good experience, texted this in. Several years ago, my husband, young children, and I went to an open house in Wellfleet. The owner, who was in Florida at the time, had a collection of Nazi kink memorabilia strewn all over his house.
What is Nazi kink?
Well, I assume it's not good. He even had a large photo of his girlfriend dressed in kink and hanging in the bedroom. We passed on the house. So
yeah, that's
there you
bad.
go.
That's
I don't
a bad
think
vibe
that's
then.
what you're looking for. It's a bad vibe. Is that what you said?
Bad vibe.
Bad
yeah,
vibe.
You
Yep.
don't want Nazi stuff generally.
You know who bought
in
it?
your house.
Donald Trump bought the house. Love the house.
Okay.
Love the memorabilia. Okay, where are we going? What's the name of the person who we're supposed to go to
We
next?
have a block. We can't see it down there.
Yours, Ed. Ed, what's your deal? Ed, welcome to the show. Nice to talk to you.
Hey guys, how you doing?
I think we're good.
Yeah, you were saying how you went to open houses when you were on vacation.
Yeah.
We just did it 2 weeks ago down in Delaware.
Oh, great.
They're building houses like crazy down there.
Yeah.
So we took a few open house tours, and they're beautiful. They're like $500,000. We walked in, and I said, "This is too nice for me." They're fantastic homes.
But it's fun, right? Doesn't it feel good?
Oh yeah, to start.
Well, okay.
$500,000 isn't bad.
Considering
it's $900.
Well, it's not so good if you can't afford it.
Well,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
Greg,
but
go ahead, Ed. What?
Delaware is only 80 feet above sea level, so everything floods down there.
Yeah, well, that's the end of that. Okay, Ed, thank you very much for the call. We thank you for that. Anything else you want to say?
No, but I'm just surprised someone would steal someone's underwear. We have a couple of those people that say their underwear was stolen during an open house.
Excuse me. I was a resident fellow at a dorm at NYU Law School.
Yeah.
You know this story. I've told you this story 100 times.
I know.
And a guy snuck into my room. Actually, I can't tell the rest of the story. I just
I don't
realized.
think you should tell that story,
Very
Jim.
good judgment on my part.
No, tell that story.
Can we erase that tape?
We can erase the tape. We're done.
We're done.
Yes, and we thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to people that came down to the Boston Public Library.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around?